Morning, councillors, senior staff and any of the public that are watching on live stream to our Liveability Governance and Finance Standing Committee meeting for the month of November. And we'll start off with any leaves of absence, and we have an apology from the Mayor today. So he's unavailable to come. So is there any other apologies of leave of absence? I don't think so. Oh, Councillor Potter's online. Yep. So, okay. So we'll move on now, and I'll go to Oh, it's okay. Can I have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Henson, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. We'll go now to Councillor Duff for the recognition of the traditional owners.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. We'll go now. Any declarations of interest, councillors, on any matters? If there's anything that pops up through the meeting, just disclose it then and we can deal with it then. So we can now move on. And on item 5.1, the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. They're all there now. We have a mover, Councillor Hanchin, second to Councillor Erkins. Questions, comments, councillors, on meeting previous minutes? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 5.2, minutes of the Liveability Standing Committee meeting held on the 12th of October. That can be found on page 12, goes through to 33. Do we have a mover? Councillor Erkin, second to Councillor Henson. Comments, questions, councillors? Okay, we'll move straight through. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 6.1, notice of motion for QE2 Park. The motion is that the committee recommends to council that council provide the additional funding in the 22-23 Capital Works program to enable the full completion of stage 1 of the QE2 Park redevelopment in Mergen. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff. This has been put forward by Councillor Duff, so Councillor Duff moves. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins. Councillor Duff, you want to speak to the motion?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jones. It says down the bottom here that cost estimates are being prepared as per council's request and a report will be tabled at the meeting. So I'd just like to hear from Manager Leanne how much money, because from the discussions we had at the last committee meeting, and we're only going to do that basic plan without the extras, we may have, it might be in budget. So I'm just keen, if that's okay, to hear from Manager Leanne to see if it's in budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Kim, we have a spreadsheet. I just would like to just bring the spreadsheet up on the screen just to show councillors the breakdown of the actual costings. So we've just been working through the costings based on the concept plan that was presented at the last council meeting. So we've worked through that, just focusing in on QE2 stage 1 because of just the time frame to pull the costings together. We've just focused on the stage 1. Working through those costings there, you'll see down the bottom, the total cost that we've identified is $311,000 to undertake the full proposed works. So I'll run through that. Just a reminder that in the budget allocation we have $140,000 in works for Queensland for this financial year and $150,000 for stage 2 in next financial year. So a total of $290,000 is existing in the budget. We've already spent $10,000 this year just actually doing the scanning of the underground services. So we've already commenced work there. Just working through, you'll see the demolition costs there on site. You'll see the approximate cost there for the new concreting for the footpaths. That's coloured concrete, stenciling of some lily pads on the concrete. There's also building approval and footing inspections required for the new shelters that's proposed for the site. So you've got the shelter cost there for 5 shelters, shelter construction, tables and benches, construction costs for the install of the tables and benches, and also the removal of the old furniture. Councillor Duff raised last time just the colour scheme to marry in with the existing infrastructure that's in the park there. We can actually get a light green, pale green colour bond, which would match the actual existing colour bond roof of the Vic and the toilet block. So therefore we would only need to repaint the rotunda roof, and there's a fair bit of graffiti on the rotunda. So our suggestion is that you would actually paint over that graffiti and make that look nice. Solar lights to bring solar lighting back into the park. There's existing speakers through the park. Some of them are working, some of them are not. So we would suggest replacing some new speakers there. You've got the electricity disconnect for all of that old lighting that's underground. So you've got old lights near the footpath. You've got old lights near existing trees. So you can see a cost there. There's also a large rock that has been previously purchased by council to put some plaques on. So there's a slab in the park ready for that rock to be installed. So we've got a cost there for the crane hire to move that rock into place. Footing design for the new Christmas tree, site fencing hire. Obviously we want to put some fencing up around the works during the construction period. Earthworks, once all of that is completed, we would like to top dress the lawn and put some turf in place where need be. There's also the removal of 3 fig trees. Our recommendation to council is to relocate those fig trees, and we have a quote for that. And then, you've just got some further seeding and topsoil, mulch around the trees, 6 new trees to be planted. And then we've actually only just got the cost to do the repairs to the crossover, which is really the design cost. At this stage, we are unable to actually advise council what the cost is to fix that crossover. It will need full engineering designs for that because it actually impacts on the road. We were hoping that we could just shape it back in the existing site, but we need to get some professional advice from infrastructure on that and a contingency there. So that's how we've come up with our costings, councillors. There is no construction drawings for this work, so there probably would be some additional design costs and construction drawing costs there for some of the work. So that's our proposed costs, and as I said before, the budget that we have is $140,000 for this financial year, and we've already used the $10,000 for the scanning. So depending on what council wants to do, to give us advice on how we progress with stage 1 of QE2.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jones, just wondering if that, I think that the Works for Queensland money that is in the next year's budget, my question is that an option to actually, because there's no timelines on that, to actually use that money in this year's budget in order to progress the majority of this work? Because if we've only got 140,000, we're not going to be able to do the project. So is that so my motion, the council provide the additional funding in the 22-23 capital works would include that, bringing that Works for Queensland money into this year's budget, and then obviously there's probably a small amount, looks like about 11,644 that we would need in addition. So just asking for that support from council.
Councillor Erkins.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, can I just ask a couple of questions on the figures? The site fencing hire for $10,000 for 3 months, do council have any fencing themselves? At that price, maybe we should be looking at having our own fencing. That's a lot of money to hire fencing.
Certainly agree. We do own some of our own fencing, but they're actually on other construction sites at the moment. So we've got other construction projects occurring across the region. So we just do not have enough fencing for the amount of construction works that council has. So in some cases we have to hire it, yes. But at the moment, the little bit of fencing that we have got, we've got fencing already at Wandai swimming pool. Yeah, so from a facilities point of view, we don't have a lot of fencing, and I don't think infrastructure has a great deal either. So I think to purchase it, you're probably looking, well into the hundred thousands of dollars to purchase enough security fencing.
I don't know, I reckon for $10,000 I could erect a fence around there. Anyway, can I just ask about the fig trees? Because they are a native to the area. Why are we taking those beautiful big shady trees out?
Can I answer that one? So the community, they're causing buckling, this big root system, and they're undermining the curb and channeling, all of the infrastructure, because of they should never have been planted there. When they were planted there, we were told they weren't fig trees, that they were some other type of species, and when they were very small, and they've turned out to be what everybody thought they were in the first place. They're actually the fig tree. So that is why they're in the wrong spot. So the community absolutely wants them removed, because they're actually a trip hazard, and you can see what they're doing. They're actually buckling all the curb and channeling. So that's why the community is keen to support, and I think infrastructure would be keen to support that as well.
Councillor Shoemaker.
You didn't have a question. Yeah, thank you for it's great to see the budget. I know last meeting was the first time we'd actually seen the plan, so it's good to see that we're progressing. I guess my questions are, so we've moved a motion already. I'm just thinking about this one out loud. We've moved a motion already to try to progress this project as quickly as possible for the community, because it's my understanding there's been a number of community conversations about this, not that I've been part of them or invited to be part of them before. So I guess my concern is, are we actually able, so if we redirect those funds from stage 2, I just want to confirm, were they actually CapEx or grant funds? The 150 for next year?
All the funds are Work for Queensland money.
All for Works for Queensland. So are you actually able to spend all of that funding this year, or would the project likely run over into the next financial year, is my question.
Good question. We hadn't really sort of started working out our programming of the works. We just wanted to see what level of funding we're going to get to then work out which components we're going to undertake. Our discussions that we've had, when we undertake these works and we're going to fence the park off, you're restricting the public to that area, and it's a complete demolition construction site, fully fenced off. So we really want to get in there and do all the works at once. So we do want this project well planned on ground when we actually start delivering it. We don't want to be stopping and starting and coming back and moving off site and then coming back in 3 months' time. It's the sort of project that we want to get a run on and complete all at once. So that's our suggestion, and I think that's what would work well for that community, because a lot of people that use the park would have to actually relocate and use the other part of QE2 while these works were being undertaken. So whether it's going to roll over across the 2 financial years, I'm not sure yet. We would have to go back and actually start looking at discussing with contractors. As you can appreciate, the works have to be scoped up, it has to be sent out for quotation, we have to lock it in with contractors, and also we have to wait on the materials to be supplied. We already know that it's going to be approximately 14 weeks before the shelters can arrive. So we're also aware that there is a price rise coming in December for the shelters, so we are keen to get confirmation so we can lock in some ordering of the materials, and then we can certainly put it out for quotation and get contractors to price it up, and also for contractors to advise us of their availability to do the works.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, we've nominated a $290,000 budget. I think you've done an amazing job yeah, to actually scope up the project and to, assess that it's going to be around that 311,000. I don't think the extra with the shortfall there of $21,644 is overly unreasonable. And I do see you've allocated $20,000 for contingency. I'm just thinking from a funding mechanism, I'm not sure what the question here is. If council's already nominated $290,000 for the budget, my question is, can we just, trust and empower our staff to get started on this project with the funding that we have? And look, I think, contingency question mark at the moment with construction costs. It's not unusual for capital projects that haven't been properly scoped to run out over budget. I'm just not sure how we could or what we would actually nominate, how we could pull $20,000, where we pull that from. I don't have the budget or anything in front of me, so I'm not sure what that looks like. So I'm supportive of the project and spending the $290,000 that council has allocated for that project. And if that means bringing those Works for Queensland funds into this year so that you can spend them this year into next year, I can see the importance of getting the project done, being that it is in the centre of town, just getting in and getting it finished and timing the budget spend around whatever it is that you need. So yeah, I'm probably looking for you, GM Peter, in terms of what is it that we actually, we're all in agreement this project has to happen. I'm just are you asking us to allocate $20,000, $21,644? Is that your intent, Councillor Duff? Where are we pulling that from? What do you actually want from council? Because I'm quite supportive of the budget you've got.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Ackerman. Yeah, so just a couple of points. So the 150,000, which is for stage 2, is actually in this financial year as well. So there is 290,000 Works for Queensland in this financial year. So that's not really an issue. It's probably just confirming that stage 2 won't be able to be funded. So it would be that money from stage 2 would be going onto there, so that there's it'll be clear that expectation that it's only the northern. That stage 1 of the project, and and that does just leave that $20,000 shortfall, which is, as you've identified, is I suppose within the contingencies. Just experience, I suppose, always tells us projects are more likely to go over than under with the current climate. But it's just getting that commitment that we can proceed with those funding.
Yeah. Any other councillors want to make comment? Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you. Yeah, look, and I guess that needs to be noted that, the stage 2, as disappointing as that may be, if it's brought forward to complete stage 1, and, often I say do it once and do it well, and if we've got an increase on those shelters at December, which is only next month, and I'm imagining, what's that, a 30% increase or something? It seems to be in line with everything else, so 30%, when you look at those shelters, then goes to, that's another $15,000 on top of that after December. So it just keeps adding up, doesn't it? But if in the event that stage 2's funding goes into stage 1 to get it done, I'm comfortable with that. But again, I guess it needs to be noted that stage 2 will just have to be put on hold until we can find further funding or can work around that. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. I just want to refer back to the standing committee, infrastructure standing committee, where the committee recommends to council that the draft design of QE2 Park Mergen concept plan section east be received and adopted by council. And that's what Councillor Shoemaker was referring to before about the discussions and all that. Just a question to you, Manager, that the 311,000 that we've got here now, is that not for the whole project, both east and west? That is just the eastern side of the project.
That is correct, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, well, I'm just me personally, I fully support bringing that money forward, getting that eastern side of that project done, completed, and the the $21,000, as Councillor Shoemaker alluded to, I don't think that's anything exorbitant to be asking for, considering what we had to put into Blackbutt, Cumbia and every other project that we've had to do and construct. So 21,000 is a pretty good result for a project like this, and this project fits completely under LRCI funding as well. So Works for Queensland. So can you cross that funding, Pete? Can Works for Queensland be used on a project and also funded with LRCI, or is that not doable?
Yeah, I think it'd be best to fund, say, stage one. If you did stage two, or like as a separate, that would be, and it could be a separate LRC project. So it'd be much cleaner to do them as two separate stages and two separate funding buckets rather than mix the funding on the one project. But you could definitely look at stage two under LRCI.
Yeah, I guess my question was, I was trying to, rather than have to take money off Rob Peter to pay Paul on that 21,000, I was just trying to look at another avenue. So we would have to find $21,000 somewhere else in the budget or move it from somewhere else. Is that correct, to fully fund it?
Yeah, I think that would be the.
All right, councillors, we've had a fair discussion on this. So Councillor Duff's notice of motion there, that the council provide the additional funding in the 22-23 Capital Works program to enable the full completion of stage one of the QE2 Park redevelopment in Mergen. So, Councillor Shoemaker?
Well, yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. I probably would like that information about where that additional funding is coming from come back to council so that we know if we have taken that off a project where that will change, or if it's coming out of our building depreciation. Like, I guess I'm looking for where, if we're going to allocate 21,000, where is that coming from? Also, I think the motion needs to include some recognition that we're nominating that $290,000 Works for Queensland budget for the completion of stage one of the Mergen QE2 Park. So probably proposing an amendment to the motion in that regard, or if Councillor Duff wants to amend it, just so that it's very clear to the community exactly that we're only going to complete stage one with those funds. So Councillor Duff.
To you, Deputy Mayor Jones, yeah, happy to amend it to note that it's only for completion of stage one, and also if it's agreeable to the council that the additional 21,000 comes from the building depreciation fund. Is that something that is achievable?
Manager or General Manager, either or Mr. CEO?
Thanks, Chair. So if I make a suggestion for this, because we've got two separate meetings now with these resolutions and we're bringing them back, and if I can preempt the next report, one of the suggestions that we've made is to actually hold the pig bounty over to get it back into the infrastructure meeting and where the NRM is for the next one. Both of the resolutions from once we finish wordsmithing this one, will come back to the ordinary meeting in November, and I would be, given the information timeframes we've had to table today, is doing a full report on that budget in that meeting. So this is the breakdown, this is where it's coming from, and that's how we're doing it. So if these two resolutions come through, they'll come back together as one report for the ordinary meeting, because QE2 then can be dealt with as a whole. And so there's, from what I'm hearing, consistent agreement about doing the project around the table. It's just the funding mechanisms and where the money, what pots the money's coming out of. So we could certainly articulate that clearly at the ordinary meeting. And that probably could be put in there, that the funding report come to the ordinary meeting.
Happy with that, Councillor?
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. Thank you.
So, Mr. CEO, keeping in mind that these standing committees, we don't make decisions or all that, but and listening to Manager Peterson say there before about the shelter prices about to be increased and we need to move, how do we give some sort of an indication to the staff that they could go ahead and purchase and save a significant, how do we address that? Your advice?
These are good questions, and it's tricky. There's a budget allocation for QE2 Park in this financial year. So we've got a design now, an indicative design. So whatever council decides, unless council came to a meeting and said, okay, we're pulling up stumps, we're not going to do it, which is highly unlikely, we can start ordering materials. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, so the indicative design is, everyone was pretty comfortable with it. We can start ordering the materials, and while we sort out the finalisation of the scope, at least get in before that price rise. So the budget already gives a head of power because there is a budget allocation to the project.
So I'll come back to you, Mr. CEO. Do you want to help us put a recommendation to council in regards to this so that we're clear and understand exactly what we're about to endorse?
I think it's funding report come to the November general meeting. 200. So it's the full budget. The 290 is all works for Queensland. Yeah. So that you could just put that as a separate line. Like just drop it down a line. That the committee notes the $290,000. Works for Queensland funding is for stage one, is for stage one only. That's fairly basic English, but it might get us until we can get to the ordinary and with Councillor Duff tidy up some of the wording. Yeah.
I'm happy with the changes. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Councillor Erkins, are you happy with the changes, the seconder? All councillors comfortable? We'll go to the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Duff, second by Councillor Erkins, that the committee recommends to council that council provide the additional funding in the 22-23 Capital Works program to enable the full completion of stage one of QE2 Park redevelopment in Mergen, that the committee notes that the $290,000 Works for Queensland funding is for stage one only, and that the funding report come to the November General Council meeting. Go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Move on now to 6.2, the pig bounty. The motion is Councillor Duff give notice at the next Liveability that the committee recommends to council that council introduce a $10 pig snout on feral pigs consistent with the bounty offered by Gympie Regional Council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, yeah.
Sorry, through you, Deputy Mayor Jones. The second recommendation is that the notice of motion lay on the table and the matter be further considered by council at the 30th of November 22 Infrastructure, Environment and Compliance Standing Committee. I'm happy just to go with that because, I mean, there's no point in moving my motion if you'd rather have it, if the CEO wants it on that, in that next, it's in the wrong committee meeting, I believe. So I'm happy to lay it on the table.
Thank you, councillors. Mr. CEO, can we deal with 6.2 and 6.3 together, or how do we deal?
Yeah, Councillor Deputy Mayor, 6.3 will be primary, so it'll gazump 6.2. But it's also, and thanks, Councillor Duff, it is also getting it into that meeting. But we had the question raised for Mayor Otto, and we've got, there's been previous reports by council, and getting the timing ready, it'll be able to give us a much more comprehensive report for you for council's consideration. So it just gives us that little bit extra time. And in your notice of motion, you requested some information, and we just didn't want to leave that without any response. And so if we can fold the previous resolution that was done only a couple of months ago, Mayor Otto's question, Councillor Duff's notice, and we can bring them all together and deal with them as one item as well.
Okay, so we're moving to 6.3, the pig bounty notice of motion, moved by Councillor Duff, that the notice of motion lay on the table and that the matter be further considered by council at the 30th of November 2022 Infrastructure, Environment and Compliance Standing Committee. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins. Straight to the vote. Go straight to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. So 6.2 and 6.3 are done. We now move on to item 7 on the agenda, 7.1, and it's a portfolio for corporate governance, strategy, people and culture, communication and media, finance and sustainability, ICT, business systems, community representation and advocacy for 2032 Olympics and Paralympics. and this is to be presented by the Mayor normally. So I will present that this portfolio report be presented as read. I move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duff. Is there any comments or questions coming out of that? Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you. Just interesting to read about the Rural Management Challenge, and I guess I was just going to ask CEO Mark to give us a bit of an overview. It sounds like we've come home with a trophy, and yes, just would like a bit more information about the Queensland Local Government Managers Rural Management Challenge.
Thank you, Councillor. We've been participating in the Rural Management Challenge since 2018-19. We've had several teams. This year, it's the idea of the concept of the challenge is teams of 4 made up traditionally of non-managerial staff. So it gives an opportunity. It's a growth by doing and a learning by doing process. So the teams are given certain pre-challenge tasks where they have to develop there's a mythical council. They develop a logo, a team culture, a team vision, put together a media release. They get given certain problems to solve and do a report on. Then on the challenge day, the teams all come together, and we actually hosted this year. So the state's broken up into regions: southeast, central, northern, far northern. I think there's about 3 or 4 regions. The team comes together. There's a whole heap of challenge tasks. So they are the executive team. So the staff are the executive team of the council for the day, from CEO down to the directors, general managers. They have a whole range of, as I said, role play. Various mayors, people play mayors, problem staff, workplace health and safety issues, disciplinary actions, community issues. Then a team member will be pulled out of the team, and so they put together a shotgun team of 4, and then they get given a task as well. So it's a cooperation. So they get all the pressures of a full day of management of an organisation that's just coming at them all the time. So there's scenarios in the past, and the scenario generally takes a theme through. So one of the ones, not this year, but previously, there was an accident at the depot. Someone was horsing around on a forklift and doing stunts, as people wrongly do on occasions, and they ran into a pallet and then another employee, and so the other employee was off for an extended period of time of work. So it was everything from why the workplace health and safety issue occurred. That was one challenge, one scenario. How would you deal with it? Posters, workplace posters, what sort of information, all the way through to having the disciplinary hearing with the staff member that was in the CEO and the role-playing manager of people and culture, then how to deal with the CEO. The role plays are generally particularly difficult as far as, well, not particularly difficult, but can be difficult. So the employee in that case certainly didn't think they did anything wrong and shouldn't be going through a process, and was quite vocal in their dispute of the process and their involvement for other support people. So it gives a real, rather than just a textbook learning, it is very much a learning by doing. It's one of the most excellent programs that we have. We've been building up now over several years a range of staff that have gone through it, and previous staff that attended the first time that we went into it, and then subsequent are now mentoring. So this year we have, it's not only the 8, well, we had 9 participants because we had a substitute as well. So we had 9 go through the process this year. We had 2 team mentors and then an overarching mentor. So we're building up that capacity of knowledge and skills within the organisation. Absolutely wonderful, and both teams did a terrific job again this year, as all of our teams have done. They represent our region with great pride, and they're a credit to the organisation and the community. This year, we were very fortunate and absolutely highly competitive to have a team win. We have placed before, but we haven't won since our participation. And we had the 2 teams present yesterday to the full SLT, and after seeing the presentations, I haven't mentioned it to anyone yet, but we can drop it today, is would like to organise an afternoon where the councillors are about, you have to see the presentations. They are so good. And when you just pride in seeing these guys, and it's not just this team, it's that building capacity and building organisational culture can take time, and you continue to see the capacity. The mentors have done a terrific job. They're equally as part of the team as anyone else, and seeing the support for the organisation. The hosting of it this year, a big shout out to Manager of People and Culture, Workplace Health and Safety, Parks and Gardens. The council was presented, so we had them come over for an evening. All the teams turn up for a social evening the night before, which is part of the cultural exchange, of organisational cultural exchange, if I can use that terminology. Then that team building through the day, and then the end of the day, the region was presented at its very best, and it was an absolute credit, everyone who participated in it. Wonderful program.
Yeah, thank you for the update. I think it is so important that our staff get an opportunity to shine and to participate and to learn from other councils, and to be part of activities like that, problem solving and critical thinking, and having an opportunity to step outside your comfort zone is so important, and very admirable that they brought back the trophy. Congratulations to all participants that I've read here. Just a wonderful effort. I would love to see you lock some time in the calendar, CEO Mark, so that we can see those presentations. That'd be great.
Thank you. Any more questions, councillors? Okay, the committee recommendation, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Duff, that the Mayor's corporate governance strategy, people and culture, communications, media, finance and sustainability, ICT, business systems, community representation and advocacy for 2032 Olympics and Paralympics portfolio report to council be received. Go to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. We now go to corporate governance and strategy, 8.1. And the officer's recommendation that the committee recommends to council that the South Burnett Regional Council conduct of council and committee meetings policy, statutory 017, be adopted as presented. And it goes all the way through there, all the way through. Everyone's had a chance to read it. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff or Councillor Shoemaker? Councillor Duff second. Any questions, comments, councillors? Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of things in the policy. It's good to see the 5-day change. I just had a couple of questions. So, page 56, section 3.41.2, through the CEO, through you, Deputy Mayor, to the CEO. I just wanted to clarify, so it's in relation to the councillor through the chairperson may at the standing committee ask a question for reply by another councillor or council officer regarding any item of business under consideration at the meeting of council. A question will be asked categorically and without argument, and no discussion will be permitted at the meeting in relation to a reply or a refusal to reply to that question. I just wanted some clarification in terms of what that actually means in practice, because often these standing committees are used as an opportunity to ask questions, and often that information actually forms your thinking or your position on the item presented. So I'm just challenging whether we even need that line. Will be asked without argument and no discussion will be permitted at the meeting in relation to a reply or a refusal to reply. Are we only, I've never experienced that before, so I'm curious what that actually means in practice.
Thanks, councillor. Just which number were you? Sorry.
3.41.2, page 56.
41.2. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yep. No, I'm on the wrong part. I was looking
Are
at
you saying
okay.
only if it's refused that the council officer or the councillor answers the question?
Yep. have a go. So what we've done with, isn't that good English, was the standing committee section of the policy was silent on questions, and it had come up. So as we've been going through all these different meetings over a period of times, where the issue was raised at a meeting and it was challenged, and there was a point where the questions came up about how many times you could ask a question and the debate at a standing committee, we lifted the section, and it was certainly Councillor Potter's feedback as far as fixing up the questions in the standing committee. We lifted the question section out of the ordinary meeting. So that's a direct lift from the ordinary meeting, which is a little bit more strict in that space. So we've circulated this a couple of times as far as, and these are for the things that we wanted. So that whole section was a direct lift from the ordinary. So at the ordinary, and why it's in the ordinary, so if I ask, without stating the obvious, I ask a question and the other councillor declines to reply or provide a response, the general gist of why it was originally put in there was that we don't end up in a slanging match between two councillors, which has been known to happen in the history of local government. Between the various parties. So the question's asked, the response is given,
And that's it.
move
there's
on.
no-
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
No,
whether
I'm-
it needs to be in the standing committee section or not, as I said, we just took that whole section and duplicated it in the standing committee. So if I was probably writing you a legal letter, I'd say, at the end of it, I would say, to remove all doubt, the discussion is you can ask questions and it's not considered a speaker for or against at a standing committee.
Yes.
That was the intent of dropping it in there.
Okay, yes. I guess my concern in reading this, and I have read it a number of times, I know it has been circulated. Often, though, our calendars are so full, you don't always get to meet those deadlines for staff. And it's my understanding today that it is an opportunity to discuss this policy. So my concerns are that with standing committees, often the purpose of a standing committee is really to help councillors understand and not always come to a position. Often you won't come to a position on a decision until the actual general meeting. You may think that's the right way to go, but I've certainly shifted my opinion. So I guess what I was hoping to see through this review is just a little bit more flexibility for councillors in standing committee meetings to have that opportunity to ask questions and to fully understand what they're making decisions on. And I'm confused because some meetings that's been allowed and some meetings it hasn't been allowed. So I guess I'm just trying to understand what these things look like in practice, because 29 pages of conduct for your meetings is a lot of rules to follow. My other question, 3.4.6, a councillor who asks a question at a meeting, whether or not upon notice, will be deemed not to have spoken to the debate of a motion to which the question relates. So you can ask a question. My question is, you can ask a question, but the time taken to ask that question isn't considered as your speaking time to debate the motion. Have I got that understanding correct, CEO Mark?
Yeah, again, it's a question is not considered part of any form, like not the debate. So you ask a question, and so if you have supplementary or several questions on the item, it's not that you've spoken 3 or 4 times, so you could ask your questions, and then if we fall back into a formal process, well, then you can speak for or against the item.
Okay, so section 3.42.2 that says during council meetings, each speaker, including when exercising the right of reply, will be restricted to no more than 5 minutes and will speak directly to the motion. That does not include, that 5 minutes does not include question time. No, I've got that correct. And then the mayor can grant extension. The chairperson can grant extension. The 5-minute proviso, is that standard or, and is, because I've been pulled up at 7 minutes before with my right of reply, so that extinguished my ability to have right of reply. I could only speak the once. So I just want to confirm do we need to put a time limit on right of reply, or does 5 minutes include your right of reply as well? I just wanted clarity around that.
Given, again, as I said, in the ordinary meeting, if you are playing by the formal rules, which is,
Which we should.
yeah, your 5 minutes is generally fairly stock standard. We could go back into the ordinary if you wanted an extra time for right of reply, then it would need to be, we could add in. But yeah, with the standing committee, we could probably, if you wanted to take that line out, we could, because the standing committees it's really in council's hands. As I said, we've taken a direct lift given the feedback and
Yeah, no,
I-
I
I'm-
fully
I'm- I'm-
understand
I'm-
that. I'm not
yeah.
trying to be difficult.
Oh, no. I'm actually agreeing with you, because this has come up several times.
Yes.
And so, and it was made as a notation, and it's the discussion's great, because it's how do we want to proceed going forward? Yeah.
Well,
So happy either way, as far as if we could leave it 5, or we could add a bit in there about 7 if you want it to be
look,
restricted, or not less restrictive.
yes, well, I just want standard rules to follow, to be honest, because they've changed so many times. So I would like to see us allocate 2 minutes for right of reply, and certainly the 5 minutes speaking directly to the motion. I guess we can always suspend standing orders, but I do think that right of reply is often important, because we've had the discussion and then you often won't arrive to a position, and if you've switched your mind, which I've done on numerous occasions, I guess I want to explain the reasons why I've changed my perspective or my mind during that debate. So because often the media will report on that, and yeah, I would just like to see clarity there. Your thoughts?
So we want, so what we'd be doing then is exercising right of reply would be restricted to, so 5 minutes for general debate, right of reply 7. Is that what we're saying?
Right of reply 2.
2, okay, yep, sure. Easy done. Well, so we'll add that. We'll just note this as amended, and if council's agreeable to that, we'll just add that in. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. That's my only suggestion.
So just for my personal, so that only applies to general or all standing committees as well?
We're in the standing committee section here, notice of standing committee meeting, so we would roll that over to the general as well. Yep.
Yeah, for
yep,
both
yep,
both
both.
meetings would be my intent, for both standing committees and general meetings. 5 minutes to speak to the motion and debate, question time, and 2 minutes right of reply.
So again, just for clarification, 5 minutes, only speak once, and then you only have that. Each councillor has the option to speak once for 5 minutes, and then right of reply, whoever moves it has the 2 minute reply.
Oh, I guess I was thinking right of reply for every yeah, I see what you mean. My thinking was right of reply, so you would have a second opportunity to speak for 2 minutes if you wanted to reply to the debate that's been given. Sorry, good pickup.
Okay, no, I'm pleased you clarified that, because that's why I went to 7. I was adding the 5. So yeah, so we would be adding a line in that the secondary opportunity to speak is 2 minutes. So first go 5, second go 2, right of reply would be to conclude the debate 5, 7. So the mover would get, what would they get for their last go?
Yeah, I would think up to 5. It never, but if there's been rigorous debate, often that right of reply is important. Or yeah, normally you'd think 3 to 4. Yeah, I don't know. My thinking is, yeah, maybe 3 to 4, but I'm 5 minutes is open then. Yeah, 5.
That right of reply 5 minutes is only for the mover. Is that correct? Yeah. Councillor Erkins.
So, through you, Deputy Mayor, I just want to clarify. So this is at the standing committee, not the general meeting. So so it's for both now. So just at a standing committee.
So the standing committee. So yeah. So when I said both before, I was going, and this
Yep.
is yeah. Well,
Yeah,
so
okay.
we'll.
So for this purpose, this is for the standing committee. So I can move a motion and speak. Somebody else can speak against the motion, and then I can have a right of reply somewhere in that debate, and then at the end for 2 minutes, and then at the end I can have another 5 minutes to summarise through the debate and everything. Yeah.
Okay, so as the movers, so ordinary meeting is the standing committees is Councillor Shoemaker's correct, is that we tried to make them more flexible. So the standing committees, you move, you speak, seconder speaks, or against speaks, everyone has a turn. You can have then a second go, 2 minutes, go around the table again. And then as the mover of the original motion or the amended motion, you would get your right of reply, which would be a third go at 5 minutes.
Okay, so, sorry. So I can speak either for or against a motion once, and then I have a second opportunity in committee meetings if I haven't moved the motion. So, I mean, quite often what has happened is I might speak either one way or the other with a motion, and then somebody speaks after me, and I realise that I haven't made my position quite clear, and you know there's a misunderstanding. So that gives an opportunity for you to get up and clarify what you actually meant. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Potter, but the ordinary meeting should stick to standard rules of engagement. So mover, seconder, speaker for, depending on which orders you want, but speaker for, speaker against, speaker for, speakers against, speaker for, speaker against, exhaust all speakers, right of reply, vote. Then you've got questions, procedural resolutions in the middle. And so the questions have no impact on. So I stand up and why do we want to paint the clubhouse? So move to paint the clubhouse blue. I don't want to paint it blue. Okay, my question is why do we want to paint the clubhouse? Blue's a really good colour and it'll protect it against the weather. Then I can speak for or against. So the question doesn't count as a debate.
Councillor Potter, you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you. In number 3.42.2, it says that this is the reason why I sort of put my my thoughts forward for this. It says that each speaker will have the opportunity to free and open debate. Say during committee meetings, each speaker will have free and open debate and be able to seek information from relevant officers and other councillors. That's why I wanted to make that delineation between a committee meeting and a council meeting, and that was probably the main reason that I put my thoughts forward when this came through, because I think we need to be able to speak freely during committee meetings, ask a lot more questions than what we maybe do sometimes because we're cut short. So I really think that, you know, the 3.42.2 is probably the one that I'll be using anyway.
Yeah, well, and just wondering when we amend this up, the intent of 342 was that the restriction was more geared to the right of reply, so that the right of reply was kept at the 5 minutes. And I'm probably sorry, Council, I probably got a little bit thinking you're going somewhere different. So there isn't really. We have tried to keep away from a set time limit on the actual standing committees. So I don't know whether we just want to keep that as a little bit free and keep the ordinary to the time. The intent of that, and we can certainly make that clearer. The intent of that was just when we get to the wrap up, the right of reply was 5. So we could probably even take that out if that was council's wish, and keep the standing committees a little bit more freewheeling.
Councillor Duff.
Through you. Oh, sorry.
You go, Councillor Potter.
Sorry, through you, Acting Chair, Deputy Mayor, I would just like to say that, each of those points, they've got a section for during committee meetings and during council meetings, and I'm just wondering whether we should actually pull them apart. So, 3.42.1, you've got the first part, which is for committee meetings, and then the second part of that is during council meetings. And that's the same as 3.42.2, and it should be the same as 3.42.3. Yeah, it is. So I'm just wondering whether each of those should be their own points separately. I suppose I'm just asking for advice with regards to that, whether we leave it as is or pull them out into their own points.
I can answer that one. That's language, councillor, because this has been placed into the standing committee section. So during the council meetings, we'll change those to committee because I've circled them before for that same reason. During a committee meeting, so this is all relevant to a standing committee. This whole section is duplicated in the council meeting as well. So you've got council and committee. So those second parts, so they don't give any effect to during a committee meeting. If you read that as during committee meetings, the mover, a motion or amendment has the right of reply. Each councillor will speak. Okay. We'll do some work on this one to clear this up.
Councillor Duff, did you have a...
Thank you.
I was just, through you, Deputy Mayor Jones, I was on the same page as Councillor Potter, because it says free and open debate, and then we were putting restrictions on the committee meetings, saying that you don't need to go around the room twice. But if you're going to do that, then it has to be articulated, in my opinion, in this section, separate to council meetings. You need to say you're allowed twice or whatever, not just it's either free and open debate or it's got restrictions. So I absolutely think it needs some work.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Duff and certainly Councillor Potter. I think I think we do need to have some sort of guidance in there for us, because there have been times when we've played by one rule in a committee meeting and then done another in the next, and that is really confusing and quite conflicting for a councillor, particularly when some items I feel maybe get more attention or have had more free and open debate because of the interest in such than other items. So I like the idea of having some guidelines around it, but I do agree that it does need to be clear so that, if we are pulled up, we can actually question why. So yeah, I'm a big believer in free and open debate, and I'm certainly a very big believer in having some flexibility in those standing committee meetings, because that is where I get my understanding that it does help inform my position at the council general meeting. So
Last chance, Councillor Erkins.
A little bit like today, where we've had a lot of speak, but I think some good stuff's come out of it. So I agree. I mean, the fact that we can come up and ask questions, if we're starting to repeat ourselves, well, it's up to whoever's chairing the meeting to sit us down. But I agree, open debate.
Yeah, look, without overcomplicating things, I think we're looking for consistency. That's all we want, whether it be in a general or a standing committee. Everything's the same. It's common sense. Just be consistent with everything you do, and each councillor has to take it on themselves to understand that they have 5 minutes. Make sure you know what you're saying and understand, and if you don't, you got that right to reply. But I think we just listen to the conversation. We're just looking for consistency. Every meeting's treated the same. Every issue's treated the same. So, alrighty. So everyone's happy with that. I think we've had enough discussion. So we have at the moment the committee recommendation.
My apologies, Deputy Mayor, do we just put statutory to be adopted, to be amended as discussed?
Oh, Councillor, if I may, it's Kim, if we can just change be adopted as amended with sections 3.41 and 3.42 to be reviewed.
Sorry, through your Deputy Mayor, can we add point 3 as well, because it's also got during council meetings, it's also got that same it needs to be specific to committee meetings? 4.2.3.
It's, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's actually 3.42.2 and 3.42.1.
Yeah, the whole sections, we'll go through those sections and clarify them. So, yeah, so which
Okay.
one? Councillor Duff, which one did you say?
Oh, I just said 41, 42 and 43. Yep.
Yeah, the reason 3.41 and 3.42 will pick up all subsections. So those two whole sections will be done. Yeah.
That's fine.
That what your understanding is, Mr. CEO? Because if they're going to ask this, are we talking the same language?
Yeah, you've gone very specific into single clauses. We'll review the 3.41 section and 3.42. So all the dot points that fall, all the subsections that fall under 3.41 and all the dot points that fall under 3.42 to ensure consistency, because there's language council's got mixed up with committee in there. But anyway, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, all good.
Okay, we've got that fixed up now. Councillor Shoemaker, you happy with that? Councillor Duff, seconder. Yeah, happy with that.
Just the numbers, yeah, 3.41 and 3.42, yeah.
So what numbers am I reading out then? What's in front of me? All righty, so we have the committee recommendation moved by Councillor Shoemaker, second by Councillor Duff, that the committee recommends to council that the South Burnett Regional Council conduct of council and committee meetings policy, statutory 017, be adopted as amended with sections 3422, 3421, 3423 to be reviewed as discussed. Councillor Potter, it will be right, and the CEO knows exactly what we're talking. That's all included under the section, so you just relax back there. It's all good. All righty, so that's our recommendation. We have the mover, the second. We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. That excluded outside all those recommendations we just talked about. We've spent about all good. Okay, 8.2, the adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Amenity and Aesthetics Shipping Containers Policy Statutory 066. The officer's recommendation that the committee recommends to council that the South Burnett Regional Council Amenity and Aesthetics Shipping Containers Policy Statutory 006 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Hanchin, second. Do we need to have a seconder to discuss it? Unless there's an amendment. All right. Easily, I'm led by the councillors. Do you want to discuss it before we have seconded? Okay, we'll discuss it. We'll just hold on that, Councillor Hanchin, for that moving this. So we'll open to the floor now for discussion on the recommendation. Who wants to speak first? Councillor Hanchin.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Shipping containers, what a can of worms they're going to be. Yeah, look, there's been a lot of work go into this, and if you read through it, there's fors and against. But my concern with this, of course, is across the board. In whichever way you go, it's not going to satisfy some of our residents, but the other implications are the costs. I mean, the shipping containers across not just the South Burnett, across the entire state has become huge. They're easily accessible, they're easily transportable, and with the demand on sheds, anyone wanting to build a shed at the moment, they just cannot get suppliers, they can't get concrete, they can't get labourers. You'll wait for a huge period of time. Yeah, and if you read our neighbouring councils, you know, there's other permits and approvals, maybe enforce you know, it's a lengthy discussion to have, but yeah, my concern is the implications that it'll have on our staff. As we've seen, there's been some fairly robust debate and concerns brought to the council chambers in relation to shipping containers in certain areas. So, yeah, certainly a piece on our agenda that happy to have the conversation and our other councillors' thoughts and opinions.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you. So I know we've had, discussion about this in the past. A couple of things I did want to check. So a Class 10A building, I just want to confirm, that is actually if you're using a shipping container as a house. Have I got that correct? No. I want to confirm, or is a 10A a shed? I always get this mixed up.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, no. So a Class 10A is a shed, so a storage thing. A Class 1A is your standard house. So no, a container is 10A, same as a shed.
As a shed. And so the policy really, if I read this correctly, General Manager and May, is around trying to give our building certifier, I've read here that at the moment when they receive complaints, council's unable to respond to these complaints in a timely manner, and most complaints go unresolved. So in reading the policy, it was my understanding this is about setting a framework that might assist our staff in determining how to proceed with the complaint process.
Through the chair. There's two sides or so. I suppose that is a resourcing side of it. So they're really not getting addressed because of the lack of resources to it. There's other high priority certification work. So the certifiers are concentrating on certifying new houses and renovations and that. So these have probably become a lower priority, but no different to a shed. A container that's placed on a block of land is a Class 10A building and requires building approval. But, with general practice, a lot of people don't go through that process, particularly for those work sites where people will use a container for a temporary period. They might be moving to a house, they've bought the container and it's there for 30 days, 60 days while they unload, or for a building site office. It's probably unreasonable to get a building approval for a container for those temporary locations. So the policy is a bit more around that, that's where you talk about providing the the 180 days, and where some of that is to allow that temporary location of shipping containers. But really with the legislation, if a container is being used as a shed, no different to a shed, then it should have building approval similar to the shed. So, and this is more around giving guidance. So again, if you can meet the building code, you could put, as long as you can meet your building setbacks, you could have two containers. You could have it at the front of your house. You could have it coloured whatever colour you want. So it's probably putting a bit more amenity aesthetics around those containers by having a policy, because again, with the building legislation is only around structural integrity, not so much about location, limiting it to one. So again, people could have two. People have more than one shed. They can have two sheds. So there are, it is more around the control of those. But in saying that, that doesn't resolve any of the resourcing issues. So if we put more restrictions around it, the resourcing issue potentially comes harder if we are enforcing them. But at least it was probably, I suppose, setting a platform, and people have some guidance on what the expectation is. So hopefully that answers some of the questions that might be floating around.
It does, thank you. And just in terms of those, like I was driving around Wandai earlier this week and I see someone's actually adapted a container for a house. They've built, it looks quite neat, like I was quite impressed. But in those instances, is that actually allowed? What does that look like from a council?
Yeah, again, through the chair. Yeah, so that is fine. So that will be a Class 1A, so they will have it. And you can, there's a lot of container houses that can be designed and constructed to meet those. So there's certain climate and energy requirements, and so there are a lot of requirements to meet that Class 1A standard. But similar, no different to a shed. You can, as long as you can manufacture and meet those standards, that structure can be classified as a 1A. So yes, again, as long as they are designed and constructed in accordance with that 1A standard, then they could be used for a dwelling.
Yeah, I've had a look at the policy. My only thinking is like, we were talking, I think when council first talked about this, we were really intending for a policy or a position in those urban or residential areas. My concern is there are shipping containers all over the region, and if we adopt this policy and people make complaints to us that we know we're not currently resolving, I'm a little bit nervous about putting a framework in place if we haven't resourced it properly. And I think, the discussion we'd had previously around the proposed policy around, limiting the number of shipping containers, the location in consideration to visibility to the road frontage and neighbourhood amenity, screened by landscaping or suitable screening structure so it's not visible, and the colour scheme consideration. Like, for me, those considerations really do apply to our areas in town or in specific residential spaces. So I think maybe the policy is a little bit open-ended in that regard, and I'm wondering if, is this a blanket approach then across the whole region, or are we actually able to specify specific areas with specific zoning where this could be an issue? Is that where the bulk of the complaints are coming from? Is probably my question, General Manager O'May.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, that it is probably does seem to be, it is across the board. So having those policy directions are to allow us to assess again. So if there's a planning application or as part of a building application. So I think, I probably would concede that there could be more clarification if it is particular within certain zones that it only applies, or there's certain different restrictions on a rural zone to a residential zone. If we want to go down the track that 2 containers might be okay on Councillor Duff's 10,000 acres or something, so in a rural zone as opposed to a residential block. So I think I would agree. It's probably not that clear in that respect.
Happy with that, Councillor?
Yeah, I'm just, I guess, open to listening to what my other colleagues have to say. I think, maybe, we've got here in the policy, the objective is to ensure that shipping containers being used are assessed against, as Class 10A buildings are assessed against appropriate provisions and complement the existing built environment and residential amenity of non-commercial properties located within defined town areas. So does the defined town area, as per the water map, sort of just include residential urban areas, or does that, is there, like, what is the defined town area?
Yeah, through chair. Yeah, we do have maps of the defined town area, so it does cover some of the. It covers obviously the residential areas and that peri-urban sort of the rural residential in some areas. So depending on each town, there are defined which we use our dog registrations, local all those sort of areas. So it does cover really just the residential. Yeah, that's right. It doesn't actually include those rural areas.
Councillor Erkins.
Probably one of my concerns at the moment, there is homeless people living everywhere, and people are allowing themselves for family members to put a container on their block, and they're making it into temporary accommodation. So I don't think that anybody really wants to live in a container unless it is set up properly. However, a lot of these people, they don't have the money to make the applications or to set it up properly, and as soon as a house become available, I'm sure many of these people would move. But at the moment, we don't know how long it's going to be till there are going to be houses for people. And I just think that as a person, I would rather see somebody living in a container, because you can have windows cut into them and you can make them comfortable, rather than in a little tent, which is, if you're homeless, and go to the agencies that are there now to help people, you know, what they give them is a little tiny tent that, you know, I mean, I definitely couldn't get down into one. And some of these people do have, I need to laugh, but some of these people have, you know, kids and all that. So I just think, you know, if we were in a better situation, if there were lots of houses available, well then, you know, maybe we could be a little more strict on it. But at the moment, it's just the circumstances of where we are. I wouldn't like to see we put in a policy where people, you know, what are you going to do? Put them out of their container because that's not approved, and give them a tent and let them go and set up somewhere else. That's my concern.
Councillor Duff.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jones, I 100% agree with Councillor Erkins. I think that the timing couldn't be worse to start to introduce a shipping container policy. I think that if we just don't have a policy, I can't understand why the staff wouldn't have this direction just even through the legal opinions, and as per the below legal opinion, the placement of shipping container, regardless as to whether temporary or permanent, requires development approval for building work. So, and then there was a reverse decision here in the Magistrates Court. Shipping container had to be fixed to land in order to constitute accessible development, and the position was reversed in a recent decision. So, you know, I think that we should just leave this on the table at this point, because I just think that we're opening a can of worms. We've got people everywhere trying to find somewhere, some people in tents. If they want to live in a shipping container, well, I just think they don't do that by choice. As Councillor Erkins has said, they are forced into situations like this. I just think that I'd like to move a procedural motion that we leave this lay on the table. Till the situation for the housing and homeless, till we, I would say indefinitely. I'm sorry, but
We should revisit when housing becomes more.
Yeah, lay on the table and so do you want? So I'm happy to let everyone. I can make it as a foreshadowed motion that we lay it on the table, rather than do it right now, because I agree. I'd like to hear the other councillors speak, but I'm just basically saying I think this needs to lay on the table because I think the timing is really bad, and particularly now with this housing and homeless crisis.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. Yeah, my opening sentence was opens a can of worms, doesn't it? Yeah, look, I think as council, I'd like to see council probably, and I made mention about the work on our staff, the load on our staff with this, but I do believe, and I'm sympathetic to the circumstances, and Councillor Erkins and Councillor Duff has alluded to in the homeless situation. I personally don't think living in a shipping container in summer is very ideal, that's for sure, but as you said, there's ways and means to make them a little bit more comfortable. They're not a very comfortable thing at the best of times, but that being said, I'd like to think this council could perhaps, if there's issues with, and I know we've had many, we've had them come to this chamber, but I think council handle them on a case-by-case basis. There is just, I believe, too many shipping containers within the South Burnett to be able to have a policy that's going to be acceptable across the board. They are everywhere, not just in, forget the rural side of things, I mean in residential areas. As I stated, they're convenient. They're quick, they're accessible. I mean, have a look at the figures, have a look around our towns in the South Burnett. You can source, rent, purchase shipping containers in any town in the South Burnett, not to mention when we go afield of here, there's thousands upon thousands of them out there that are available. Yeah, personally myself, I'd like to think that this council could, look, we're moving forward, just work on a case-by-case basis, that if there's issues with shipping containers, we take that on board. I really don't. I think this is just too big to have a policy in place that we dictate to people. You know, a minimum of 7 metres from the street. It's got to be landscaped. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. I mean, there's shipping containers from being once used, brand new to once used, to some fairly ugly sites in places. But yeah, I'd like to think that we could work collaboratively towards individual cases.
Councillor Potter, any comments? You must be on mute or something, councillor. You're not coming through.
Sorry, I couldn't get the computer to unmute. Listen, I've been sitting here listening to this, but I'm actually wondering if I've got a conflict here, to be quite honest, because we do have a shipping container on our property right now as we speak for storage. So I would like to ask the council their thoughts on that, whether they want me to leave the meeting for the rest of this discussion. I haven't taken into this discussion yet.
Mr. CEO?
Oh, good question. Without going into it, you would be of one of 1,000 containers across the region. It really, we can't tell you whether you leave or go. It would be whether you want to step aside voluntarily or, but certainly you would have no interest in this or no benefit in this compared to anyone else. Whatever the policy council adopts is a policy framework that applies to everyone equally, and we would end up in the position, I suspect, where we were a couple of months or a couple of weeks back, where if everyone who owns or has had anything to do with a container steps out of the room, it'll be a very easy decision because it'll be me. Yeah, so thank you. Well noted, Councillor Potter, and I'll also note the advice that you would have, if you're uncomfortable and you want to step out, no one can stop you, or should. But if you're asking for the council step out and council vote on it, well, that's a different question as well. But in my thoughts, you would have no greater interest in this than any other person in the region. We're not dealing with your direct case. It's a policy platform that will give guidance into the future.
Would this be similar to dog registrations? Because because of a lot of people still have dogs, so I wouldn't see that I would have any greater or lesser conflict than anyone else in the community.
Yeah, it'll be noted, councillor. Councillors, no one else has got any issues with?
No, but I also have a container. At the moment, I don't have anyone living in it, but to be honest, I'm thinking of putting someone in. I might have to.
Has anyone else got
I
containers?
have shipping containers, yes, on all of my rural properties.
So yous are all the troublemakers. Councillor Duff, do you have one out there?
No, I don't actually, Deputy Mayor Jones.
The only one, yes, I do on my property, Deputy Mayor, yep.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Jones.
Yeah, me too. So, yeah. So we'll all have a conversation. I just want to, everyone knows my feelings, and it's been touched on here that it's homeless and all that, and you throw it out. But I think the staff needs something as far as the policy. And when I say this, the staff understand the feelings of the councillors, and we don't want to force anybody out, and we don't want to see them living they don't live in a tent, they don't live in a shipping container by choice. But I think if they are living in a shipping container, they surely have the time to keep it presentable and tidy. And sometimes that's not happening. If this policy was to be put in place, I am sure and I'd be guided by the CEO and the general manager that all the staff would take everything that us as a group of councillors have expressed, that we don't want to see anyone kicked to the curb, we don't want to see anything, but I'll throw this out at you. It's not a homeless person, it's somebody that's got a nice property or whatever, and somebody moves containers in next door and it's all untidy and unkept. This policy gives the staff in that situation something as a guide. Me personally, I'm happy for this. As long as it's consistent, as General Manager said, and Councillor Duff and Shoemaker and all that have alluded to, it needs to be consistent right across for rural residential and towns. The same policy, I think, should apply to everybody. But I do think that the staff need something that they can refer back to. And I go to page 81, 3.1, the anonymous complaints. Council will accept but will not action anonymous complaints regarding shipping containers on non-commercial property within defined town areas, that sort of stuff. It gives them a little bit of a guideline to operate. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that all the staff understand the feelings of all the councillors here. We don't want to see people kicked to the curb. We don't want to see them put in any worse position than what they already are. And I think all the staff would take that into consideration. If there was a complaint came in and all that sort of stuff, they would work with them. But my concerns is more around a legitimate complaint against a shipping container that's placed somewhere. The people have the ability to maintain, look after, make it presentable and all that sort of stuff. It just gives the staff a guideline to operate on. Yeah, that's just my feelings on it. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you've said, Councillor Jones. I do think it's a tricky time because we do have such a housing crisis, and I also recognise that being that I did sell my property and I did need to put all of my items into storage, and I couldn't actually get a storage shed in town. It was like literally the day before I moved house that somehow, by sheer miracle, I was on a waiting list, and somehow I managed to get some storage space, which was less than ideal, but with a local real estate agent. I'm really mindful in the conversations that I've had with real estate agents that when people can't find housing, that really is their option, that they're looking to store their items and belongings in something until they can find appropriate housing. So I do think we do need a bit of a laxed policy in that regard, but I do also recognise in areas where we've got people putting them on top of each other, which is, a risk, or if you've got a small property and you've put half a dozen containers on it and your residents are surrounding you are unhappy with that because of snakes and things under them, that is a problem. So I think this policy is a good start. I think the work here that says around management and enforcement action will be taken by council should non-compliance with legislation be identified. So my question was, if you had, to General Manager O'May, if you had your container, let's say I've got 3 on my 600 square metre block here in town, and my neighbours are cranky and they've been there for over 180 days, under this policy, the staff could take any one of the several actions listed below, which was record only with no response, verbal warnings, written warnings or cautions, notices or orders, penalty infringement notices, and prosecution or civil proceedings. So it's important for consistency, transparency and procedural fairness. The council authorised person follows up enforcement action undertaken. Failure to finalise enforcement actions may expose council to significant liability. Just wanted to fully understand, so if there was repeat complaints or, do we need to add a little bit more clarity around when you would take those sorts of actions, or does this policy give our staff the flexibility, and do they already do these things under legislation anyway? Sort of my thinking.
Through the chair. Yeah, so the actual enforcement of that, it probably doesn't need to be specified directly in the policy, because there's a number of any various pieces of legislation that the teams would be enforcing. So that's more in an enforcement policies, like we give a warning before we would issue a PIN and those sort of the practices. So yeah, I don't think it necessarily needs to be spelt out in the particular policy. As we said, we've got enforcement powers at the moment, sort of thing, with the under the building code, but that's related to getting building approval for it, but it's not around the limiting the numbers or the structure. So yes, if someone could have a block and could fit them on a block within their boundary distances and site coverage, and they could get building approval for 2 containers or 3 containers, and then that would be able to be authorised at the moment through the proper processes. But yeah, so at the moment there's no sort of restrictions on that. But what we're talking about is that at the moment there's probably 95% of the containers that owners don't go through through those approval processes. And this is certainly not, the use of the container, so using it, well, this has nothing to do whether people use it for storing goods or whether they're living in it. So like the policy can no way, it doesn't, not having it or having it doesn't impact the requirement for people for those containers to meet certain standards. So the ones that are living in standard containers are doing so outside the current legislation. So this policy won't change that at all.
So, GM, we have a foreshadowed motion there. So, to lay it on the table, is listening to everybody's comments here today, is there an opportunity for yourself and Manager Darryl to have a bit of a conversation and get some more information around enforcement and how things could coming back to the general?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Yeah, so there was the previous resolution, I think back in July, we laid it on the table till after the housing for it, and we've had some of the comments around the homeless issue. So today was really just to bring it back, because the housing forum's been, so we wanted to bring it back. It was to actually lay on the table till after there and to be allowed to be workshopped by council. So I think, yeah, given the discussion, there probably is some more discussion whether we can organise a workshop and have a bit more of a look at that enforcement to bring back. So,
Councillor Duff, do you?
I'm happy to have the foreshadowed motion to lay it on the table until we have a workshop. Yep.
So do we have a seconder for that, Councillor Erkins? Sorry, Councillor Potter, I missed you there. So we'll just wait for Kim to put the foreshadowed motion up. So is that you right with that, Mark? Okay, so we have Councillor Duff has moved a foreshadowed motion for the following, that item 8.2, I can't read that, Kim, sorry. 8.2, South Burnett Regional Council Amenity and Aesthetics Shipping Containers Policy Statutory 066 lay on the table until a workshop with councillors is held. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Acting Chair,
Yes.
there's just one thing I will need to follow up. We've got a couple of very active complaints in this space that don't involve homeless people, that don't involve anything that's been discussed here today. I am in constant, but in conversation with your Ombudsman's office, as well as several other parties that are party to the issues involved. We will start to take enforcement action, or at least investigate and action the complaints. So just so everyone's clear that, and that's not, and the reason I didn't bring it up before, because the policy is here. These are Building Act complaints, so they will, and there's one that probably springs to mind, but there are more than one. So within we'll prioritise and then start dealing with those complaints so that everyone is aware of what we're going to do next.
Thanks, Mr. CEO, and that was my comments around the genuine, we do need something in place for the staff, but anyway, it's left on the table. Okay, I'll move that we break out of the meeting and for morning tea at 10:40. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, all those in favour? Unanimous. We'll try and be back here, councillors, at 11 o'clock so we can get underway. We have a big agenda. Thank you. Okay, councillors, staff and people on the live stream, I move that we resume the meeting at 11:05 by the looks of it. 11 a.m. Okay, we'll go with 11 a.m. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henson, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. We'll start again now on agenda item 9.1, the Financial Assistance Grant, the Grants Commission. The officer's recommendation that the committee recommend to council, 1, that council support the LGAQ policy executive in their advocacy of the resolutions adopted at the 22 state conference. 2, that council amend the adopted budget at the second quarter review to reflect and account for a 50% early payment of the 23-24 financial year financial assistance grant allocation. And 3, that the question on notice by Mayor Otto be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder. Councillor Henson. Comments, questions, councillors? Councillor Duff.
I'm asked the question through you, Deputy Mayor Jones. What is our current operating deficit? Are we comfortable carrying this level of deficit? And if not, what are we going to do about it before the 30th of June? And then a question to Mr. CEO. When we adopted the budget, the executive leadership team committed to holding the wages to not increase the amount adopted in the budget for staff wages. Are we still on track? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, okay, I'm probably going to answer the second one first. So the quarterly amendments has only been, the first quarter amendment, if councillors went through the amendments, was only adopted for or amended to include any grant revenue. So the wages haven't been changed as far as what was adopted at budget. So yes, we have held true to that. EBA, which will be a discussion later, there was EBA discussions which will come into play in January and they will have an impact, but they're their own decision. So that was the second one. So first one with the deficit, that's an excellent question, councillor. And coming to the Budget Committee meeting next week, hoping to have a report or planning to have a report for you about what we can see can do. The deficit is, I'm quite not sure why the question relates to this report, because we discussed in a good degree of detail that the 75%, so I'll go back and a long answer short, I suppose. So the 75% early payment on FAGs on the financial assistance grant was reflective of what was paid. And the report actually articulates it's not only our council and certainly our conveying the message to the Grants Commission, the deficit is extremely, the payment of FAGs is extremely volatile. It is out of the control of the council. The Grants Commission don't know how much they're getting in any great detail. And this is following up on all the questions that have been previously asked. And they won't know until next year. It's a rotten way to do budgeting because you don't know a significant proportion of your income. You don't know what's coming in. It's in the hands of the Commonwealth government and then through them the state government and the councils at the end, on the bottom of the food chain on it. In speaking and following up with the financial, and the reason we're bringing it up and to bring it through to the second, in normal circumstances you would budget on what you received in the previous financial year, and the early payments, the cash is in the bank. So the cash for the financial assistance grant sits in the bank and is there until it rolls into the financial year to be spent. But the early payment of financial assistance grant distorts our book and gives an artificial inflation to either 1 year's income and 1 year's expenses. So when you look at the rolling average of deficit to surplus, and when you'd recall we recorded a surplus for this last financial year, which sat around, Kerry, I think, without having the number in front, around that $3 million mark, give or take. Bit more than that. So when you add, so we've got a, so if you're looking at our current 2-year average, we expected we would run a deficit this last year. We ended up in a surplus. Partly that was 2 million of that was partly due to, or thereabouts was due to FAGs. So if you put $3 million deficit this year, $3 million surplus last year, 2-year average, we're balanced. So which equalises where we are. So this year, this impact of this change will on paper increase the deficit. It could sit around about anything 4.5 to 5, but we'll have to do the numbers in the second quarter. So that, please don't take that as gospel, but that will be. And it's an artificial number created by an accounting standard that council has no power to change, nor does it impact on the cash in the bank or our financial position. It's a reporting mechanism that we and other councils, as you would read the report in the state, have articulated for a long time, doesn't represent the state of our books nor the state of our budget. What are we going to do about the deficit? Well, there's a range of, as I said, that's a conversation for next. Well, happy to have it today too, but hopefully, certainly next week. There has been some fair discussion at the executive leadership team, and I'd like to table next week at the budget committee some ideas about the reduction of deficit. Quite fundamentally, and it's been spoken about a couple of times, capital, whilst it doesn't affect the operational deficit, we are running a major capital program, and that does affect cash balances, or may affect cash balances. The services the council operates and the amount of staff and the council has. Council's made a commitment in the past, which is a tremendous commitment, that it's not looking at any form of redundancy, and we're holding true to that. But there are a range of services, and it's no different to the discussion about the visitor information centres. What are we going to do about the deficit? Unless we increase income, well, then there's reduced expenses. We carry a range of assets, so the capital program feeds into the assets. So the more assets we have, the more depreciation we have. The valuations increase the value of those assets every year, and with inflation running at about 7%, give or take at the minute, that will only continue to increase for the short term. I don't know if anyone had the pleasure of watching the budget presentation the other day, the Commonwealth budget, but there were some scary numbers in that. Power prices increasing by 50% over the next 2 years. The cash rate, interest rate, cash rate in that, with the interest rate rise the other day, went to 2.8 or 0.285 or 2.85. The budget papers actually predicted, and it was in the public domain, that the cash rate for the Reserve Bank will end up at 3.35 before the end of the year. So there's more interest rate rises coming, and that's, if you would hardly think they'd get that wrong. So long story short is really it is a review of what services do we offer, and are we comfortable carrying the basically a depreciation deficit. And with this year, if we budget, we followed up on council's resolutions and discussion the last time this came up, and this was the best advice the Grants Commission can give us without actually giving us an actual number as to what happens. It looks like our payment will stay the same. That was the one good thing that came out of that conversation the other day. But we have to, if we have to account for the change or how they report on the financial assistance grant, it was certainly, I understood it as an indication from council that they wanted that change made earlier rather than later. Otherwise, we won't know what the actual impact would be until third or fourth quarter of this financial year. So it's probably a long roundabout answer, council, but it's sort of all the different bits brought together.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jones. So thank you for that comprehensive answer. I just, it was the fact that we budgeted for, I think it was 75% with the fags, and now it's been reduced back to 50, would obviously change the way that the reporting is. And as you said, it's just a book entry. But the other one was that we had a commitment. Well, I thought that we had, you certainly hold the wages on that, what we budgeted for, but we also talked about natural attrition, which is certainly not hiring or firing any staff, but it is when someone retires, we don't replace that position unless we have, a business case or something. So I just wanted to see whether that was something that you've been considering in the process of the the way that you manage the staff. Has natural attrition been considered? And because I noticed that we have been applying, we're seeing all the jobs that are going out for applications, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are around that as an option.
Okay, again, nothing to do with the financial assistance grants, but natural attrition is considered. Wages have been held at the level, as I said, there was in the first quarter and reported and adopted by council impacts through grant funding, so that did impact wages. the positions that you're seeing advertising, our turnover is running at about 15%, and comparable to other councils is actually quite good at the minute. It has come back a little bit. We will move into... and again, I'm just thinking how best to answer you, because short answer, does natural attrition get considered? Yes. Are the staff positions that we're advertising essential to do our job and deliver the services the council has adopted in its budget? Yes. And has the wages been held barring the impact on grant funding? Yes. So the EBA is a separate discussion, and that will come up later. And certainly we have an EBA that expires that will need to be discussed.
Thank you. Just wanted the other question, just what is our current operating deficit? That was just the other question. Thank you.
Approximately 2.93. It was in the first quarter review the other day. We pulled it back 140,000 from what was the first quarter review last month, pulled back about 140,000. I'm looking at Kerry without checking my notes. We're about 2.9 when we adopted the budget, and it came back to about like 2.8.
It's currently about 3.4.
Oh, 3. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
totally off.
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, but it did pull back the 140 in the first quarter.
Yes, it did pull back.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
My apologies for that, and that's what I get for not looking at my notes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, certainly it's interesting to see with the federal budget that, the LGAQ's call for federal assistance grants to be at least 1% of federal taxation revenue, as per the asks of all local governments across Australia, has not been delivered on. And alarmingly so, these grants have actually, the FAGS grants have actually reduced from 0.55% to 0.52%. So I don't like our chances of actually getting an increase in this funding, and I guess that's where difficult decisions will continue to have to be made for this council to be sustainable into the future, and for many councils, to be honest, because untied grant revenue of this nature really is rare. So my only question in relation to the report that you put forward, CEO Mark, I was reading here from the discussions that you had with the Grants Commissioner that there was a belief from the Commission that the total pool of funding for Queensland may increase 2 to 3%, which would have an impact on maintaining South Burnett regional funding at the current level. I just didn't fully understand what that meant. Would Queensland councils in line to get more of the now 0.52% of federal taxation revenue?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Basically, they don't have anything confirmed in writing, and they will not until probably May, June next year. But it's there from discussions they've had at Commonwealth and other levels, is that they expect the total pool to increase a little bit, which is at 2 to 3%. If that happens, well, then we should receive effectively the same dollar value that we received this year, but we won't go backwards the 600,000 that they had in their correspondence 12 months ago. They said we'd lose 1.8 million or 2 million, give or take, over the 3 years. So we basically held, I think, $35,000 increase this year, which was status quo. They're expecting that we should hold that same dollar value, so no, not a dollar more, not a dollar less. And then next year is the third year of this program of rollout of the new methodology, is anyone's guess. It's in the laps of the gods. So, and again, to go back to the question, Councillor, just to reiterate that, why the 75%? You budget on what they give, because they've been quite consistent as the 50% for a long period of time, and the confusion we have as local government, as an industry and councillors and staff, we have enough trouble following how they're doing this. So they could roll 75% in advance, they may not. So if we're going to drop it down second quarter, is probably as an ideal time as any. Otherwise, it'll most likely be, by the time we get advice, it'll most likely be at the conclusion of the financial year. So, yeah, if we want to drop it down and have the paper bad news now, probably the second quarter is the time to do it. But there's no guarantee they won't pay the 75%. They just don't know.
All right, we've got the recommendation in front of us, moved by councillor Shoemaker, second by councillor Henson, that the committee recommend to council, one, that the council support the LGAQ policy executive in their advocacy of the resolutions adopted at the 22 state conference. Two, that council amend the adopted budget at the second quarter review to reflect and account for a 50% early payment of the 23-24 financial assistance grants. And three, that the question on notice by Mayor Otto be received for information. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. We move to item 10.1, Community Development, Arts and Heritage and Library Services Portfolio Report. And Councillor Potter, I'll ask you to present your portfolio.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I'd like to actually to have my report as read without me having to go through it, but there was just a couple of things I did want to point out. One was with the Youth Council. So we've got a few of the youth councils that are in the final grades. So the December meeting will be the last meeting for this year's Youth Council, and we will begin we will start recruitment of the new committee to begin in January with the handover of the two committees in February 2023. The Arts, Culture and Heritage, you'll see later on that there's a bit of a change to the committee with councillors. So it's wonderful without being ahead of the game here, although I would just like to say it'll be good to have Councillor Erkins on board there, because Councillor Duff has kindly said that Councillor Erkins could do the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee. And they're doing the strategic plan. There's actually a meeting set for Thursday, the 15th of December for that committee, which is wonderful. And the same as the Ringsfield House Advisory Committee, there's a meeting set for that one on the 15th of November. So I'd actually like to move my report as being read. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins. Comments, questions on Councillor Potter's portfolio? Councillor Shoemaker.
Just one question. I'm reading about the Waste Warriors network. So there'll be workshops for those in November. Keen to get that in my calendar. Just thinking about the waste strategy that Councillor Potter, you sit on the committee representing council to develop that waste strategy. Just wondering if you've got any update about the recent meeting that was held, the regional waste.
I don't actually have any updates with regards to that recent meeting because I kept on getting kicked out of that one. For some reason, the Wi-Fi wasn't very good that particular day. But with regards to the waste and recycling, they are going into the schools to actually do a bit of promotional things with the kids through the schools and that, so which I think is wonderful. But I will bring a report back to the next meeting with regards to the waste and recycling, because I think that's in my other report from last week. Thanks.
Councillor Erkins.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate the library staff in Nanango. I happened to be there for their Halloween sessions there, and they had lots of kids excitedly doing craft. It was a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Any more questions, comments? Okay, we have Councillor Potter has moved that her portfolio report for the month of November be received. Second by Councillor Erkins. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Move on to 11, Community Development, Health, Youth, Senior Citizens. 11.1, Licence to Occupy, Les Muller Hut, Blackbutt. The officer's recommendation that the committee recommends to council that 1, the South Burnett Regional Council resolves that the exception in Local Government Regulation 2012 Section 2361B2 applies to council for the disposal by way of grant of a licence to occupy to the valuable non-current asset, which is the land comprising part of Lot 1 on RP 120337 to the Blooming Beautiful Blackbutt Festival Inc., a community organisation other than by way of tender or auction, for a term of 1 year with an option of a further term of 1 year on terms agreed between council and the Bloomin' Beautiful Blackbutt Festival Inc. And 2, the South Burnett Regional Council delegates to the Chief Executive Officer the power to negotiate, finalise and execute the licence to occupy between Council and the Bloomin' Beautiful Blackbutt Festival Inc. on terms and conditions the Chief Executive Officer reasonably considers as satisfactory to the Council. I'll now go to Manager Jennifer and ask for any comments, and we'll have a conversation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this request came in from the Bloomin' Blackbutt Festival Committee. They asked initially just for some use of the building during the 6 weekends of amazing things that they do down there. And we gave them a short-term memorandum of understanding, essentially just about on par with a hire agreement to see how they worked well in the space and whether it met their needs. They've come back and requested more permanent tenure. A licensed occupier is the most appropriate tenure to offer there. So it will mean that council will retain some responsibilities with regards to capital works and maintenance to the building. So essentially the festival committee will be occupying the building for a very specific purpose, which is outlined in the report. Thank you.
Councillors, any comments? Councillor Erkins.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So it says that, so are they a not-for-profit group or it's a commercial operation?
So through you, Deputy Mayor, they are a not-for-profit. They are registered on the Incorporated Associations list with the Office of Fair Trading in Queensland.
Any other comments, questions, councillors? Councillor Schumacher.
Only that I think this is a wonderful opportunity to put somebody who's, doing some incredible work in Blackbutt in that hut and to have it actually occupied by a community group such as this is amazing. I attended many of the Blackbutt Delights events this year and have attended Blooming Beautiful Blackbutt, I think, since its inception, and it's been amazing to see how that festival has actually grown. So I'm fully supportive of the idea. I think that is an incredible committee kicking some incredible goals in the township of Blackbutt, and I'm fully supportive of the request for that committee to hold a licence to occupy the Les Muller hut. So thank you for bringing it forward and the work that's gone in behind the scenes to make that happen.
Okay, any more comments? We go to the vote. The officer's recommendation, we need a mover, we need that the committee recommends to council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 12.1, change of council representatives of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee. The officer's recommendation that the committee recommend to council that Councillor Duff, as the Deputy Chair of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee, be replaced by Councillor Erkins in alignment with the Arts, Culture and Heritage terms of reference. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Henson. It's a pretty straightforward recommendation. Any comments, questions, councillors? We go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Congratulations, Councillor Erkins. We'll watch the arts and culture bound ahead in leaps and bounds, hopefully. Expo 88, 12.2, Expo 88 statue rescuing Captain Bligh. The officer's recommendation that the committee recommend to council that council advise the legacy of Expo 88 organisation that council is not able to accept and display the Expo 88 statue rescuing Captain Bligh. Do we have a mover? Councillor Erkin, second to Councillor Henson. Comments, questions, councillors? We'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. 13, Portfolio, Tourism and Visitor Information Centres, Sport and Recreation and Commercial Enterprises, 13.1. I'll now ask Councillor Erkins to present her portfolio for the month of November.
I'd like to take my report as being read, and I'd just like to say that there is a meeting coming up shortly with the Visit South Burnett, and I'm keen to see what progress can be made there.
Thank you, councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff. Questions, comments, councillors? Councillor Schumacher.
Just wonderful to read that we've received the funding for Queensland Government Tourism Experience Development Fund for $50,000 to install 9 new split air conditioners, upgrade the kiosk floor, eatery, painting of the manager's residence, and installation of a shower in the contractor's facility, and install 9 Colorbond carports. It's just great to get an update on that. I know that was a really key project that we were sad to have to move out of our budget, but it's wonderful that we've been given the grant funding and to read that things are progressing there. I know those facilities will be so busy over the summer periods. It's wonderful to see that investment in our facilities there at Bajoki Peterson Dam.
Thanks, councillor. I just want to acknowledge the amount of events in October and the amount of benefit to the economy of our South Burnett region with all those events happening, the Oktoberfest, Bajoki Peterson Fishing Classic, the Kingaroy Speedway, Waterhole Rocks, the Country Music Campout, just to name those, and the amount of people and the amount of money that would have been brought into our South Burnett region. And Halloween in Nanango was Jane or Councillor Erkins run that with all her volunteers, and it was very well attended. There was some great costumes. So in the month of October, 10 events there, all very successful in their own right. So we have there that Councillor Erkins' portfolio report be endorsed, moved by Councillor Erkins, second by Councillor Duff. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 14.1, Community and Lifestyle Operational Update. And the officer's recommendation that the Community and Lifestyle Operation Update be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henchen, second Councillor Duff. Questions, comments, councillors? There's a lot of information there. Councillor Erkins.
I did visit, is this where I talk about the information centre? Is that in there? I noticed in Nanango a couple of things. One is that they've just got that screen up and running, way out of date. There's some things in, it had the Bell Tower restaurant in it, but also just a little thing. One of the things that people love going on there is getting on the bike. There's no gobstoppers in the thing, and apparently they've been waiting some time for gobstoppers. And you know volunteers are very, very important. And when they can't have gobstoppers in the machine, they're not happy. Thanks.
No worries, councillor. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. So if there's no further questions in regards to 14.1, Community and Lifestyle Operational Update, moved by Councillor Henchen, second by Councillor Duff, that the Community and Lifestyle Operational Update be received for information. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. 15, Commercial Enterprises. 15.1, Capital Works, Coolabunnya Sale Yards and Cemeteries. We've got a capital works program for the Coolabunnya Sale Yards and the South Burnett Cemeteries has been defined and requires additional funds to complete. The officer's recommendation is that the committee recommend to council, number 1, reallocation of $67,777 from council's capital budget for 22-23 from cemetery projects be allocated to the Coolabunnya Sale Yards. 2, allocation of $78,223 from council's capital budget for 22-23 be allocated to Coolabunnya Sale Yards. 3, capital works for the Tabinga Cemetery car park reseal, Tabinga Cemetery expansion, Proston expansion and road be deferred to the 23-24 capital works program. And 4, the capital works projects for Coolabunnya Sale Yards of full replacement of elevated catwalks, timber to steel, replacement of additional holding yards and replacement tank and renewal of Scales office be considered in the 23-24 capital works program. And you have the financial and resource implications listed below. I think we'll go to Manager Jennifer and GM O'May. If there's any comments before we open up to the floor, we'll have a conversation before we get a seconder and mover. Jennifer?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So when we've looked at our capital works program between now and the end of June, we've tried to make, I guess, some assessments about what's achievable with the funding that's available across both the cemetery and the sale yards assets. At this stage, we've got no scoping or design for the works in the cemetery, and they're very important projects that need to be delivered, but just concerned that I'm probably not able to deliver them in their full right before the end of June. So that's, I guess, part of the concern. The second concern is that without going back through historical records of the amount of capital spent at Coolabunga over the last 5 years previous to my time, there is a number of workplace health and safety issues at the yards and also animal welfare risks that were certainly identified and brought to the working group committee meeting over the last couple of months. So we're trying to work through, I guess, prioritising those works as best as we can with the budget available. So we've sort of taken, particularly with the sale yards, to look at workplace health and safety first, animal welfare second, and then anything aesthetic third. So we've tried to, I guess, prioritise those works at the sale yards to look at replacing those front holding yards. We specifically have identified those yards because they, in practical terms, support the use of the yards to the most number of customers that actually utilise the yards as a clearing facility rather than a selling complex. And then additionally, the pressure pump is a great alternative to, rather than finding the electrical fault in the current system. So by just installing a bigger pressure pump, we can have the pressure system and sprinkler system available through the summer months, particularly if we do have a heat wave, which, you know, is more than possible given the amount of rainfall we've had and probably more than likely a higher than average humidity level. So essentially that means that when cattle are sitting in the yard waiting for transportation, they can be cooled. So obviously that's an animal welfare outcome. And the last one is the replacement of boards of the elevated catwalks rather than full replacement to steel, which we'd like to undertake in the next financial year. Sorry. With regards to the cemetery, we're very short on surveyed and, I guess, allocated plinths within our cemeteries, in the lawn cemetery particularly. So we've done a very sort of quick audit and found that Blackbutt, Bondi and Nanango particularly, we don't have a lot of available plots left, and that by allocating that $35,000, we think we can achieve 121 sites, which will give us some, I guess, some long-term surety that we've got plenty of, we can keep taking reservations for quite some time. So with that one particularly, just trying to bundle it together to maximise our procurement opportunity to get the best value for money.
Councillors, Councillor Erkins.
Probably one of the things that I'd like to ask, for Coolabunga, what income does that bring us in?
So through you, Deputy Mayor, the income for 2021-2022 actuals was $156,350. The proposed income for this financial year in the budget is $194,000. I would imagine, if I'm looking at the actuals, given that the next round of, I guess, large influx of cattle through the facility that may be cleared or sold will be the weaner sales, which can run anywhere from April to July, depending on the calving season in the area. I'd imagine it would be on schedule this year, given the season we've had. So we can expect, from a cash flow point of view, December and January to be quite quiet. February, March, but then our peak season again will be, that April, May, June.
Okay, probably one of the things that concerns me, and like I'm very supportive of the sale yards. I would love to see us be able to promote them into tourism because I think it's a great attraction. However, on going out there, it's not very inviting. Just when you go there, that building at the front, if you're going to do anything for visitors and you want them to stop and have a look and give them a cup of tea or something. But, you know, the income that it brings in and the money that's got to be spent there, I just don't see how it really works out. I don't know a lot about it, I have to be honest, but the amount of the amount of agents using it. How many of the agents in the area, do all the agents use those yards? The sale yards, do you know? Sorry.
So we have one agent that uses the yards on a continual basis. We're open to any other agents utilising the yards. It's a free market. It really comes down to supply and demand, but a majority of our customers aren't associated with agents. They are individuals either using the yards for cross-loading, so small, particularly because we have a large amount of small acreage in around the area. People will bring their small body loads in and then cross-load onto B-doubles to head to their final destination. So it gives them, I guess, that economy of scale with freight particularly. The second usage obviously is the clearing facility, and again, more often than not, that can be individuals, and it can use a range of selling opportunities. So it could be as simple as somebody in the North Burnett has listed cattle on Auctions Plus, sold them over the online system, they have to be cleared, they come through come through this clearing facility heading to a southern destination, maybe if they're store cattle heading them down into a feedlot. It really depends on where they are in the supply chain.
It probably, I mean, I know that in speaking to some of my fellow councillors, what they have said to me is that when this has been discussed before, that there's a lot of feedback from community in worry that they might close it down. However, I think it comes down to the fact that it is a commercial operation and it does need to be self-sufficient. So I think really the community need to know that it's a matter of use it or lose it, because there are some things that council does have to fund that is not a profitable thing, but it affects a larger portion of our community. The sale yards does not probably service as big a area as maybe, say, libraries or something. But I do think that we need to look at how we can increase the usage or maybe the income so that it is more sustainable, because, I mean, as we all know, funding is very, very scarce now. Our community are going to be suffering with added prices with inflation, interest rises. So I just think that it is something that we need to bear in mind, that it should be, we should be looking at ways to increase the productivity of that facility.
Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. Yes, obviously we would all love the Coolangatta sale yards to be running at a profit and to be, as Councillor Erkins has articulated, I agree. But we have made a decision through this process. We've been toing and froing for a very, very long time about the Coolangatta sale yards, and a lot about that was, as we do with libraries, it was about supporting farmers. It was about even mental health issues have been discussed. So it is something that's probably a bigger conversation than we have time for today. However, these issues that have been identified, these capital works projects and repairs and maintenance projects that have been identified are urgent. They're workplace health and safety issues. So I'm supporting the motion. I'm disappointed that it has to be taken out of the cemeteries, but I'm happy to see that in item number 3, that those Tobinga, Proston cemetery upgrades will be in the 23-24 capital works program. So I'm supportive of the motion with that clause in there. Thank you.
Councillor Anchin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Erkins, there's been an awful lot of work done in the Coolabunga sale yards. It's been tossed backwards and forwards, and correct me if I'm wrong, but previously it wasn't its own business unit, whereas now it is. So we've taken a different direction, and with all the consultation that was done, as Councillor Duff and prior, with all due respect, Councillor Erkins, before your time, the consultation that was done in the past 2 years on that Coolabunga sale yards has got us to this point that it was decided that, you know, that money goes back into it, and if we need to invest more money, and as Councillor Duff has alluded to, workplace health and safety, the comments were often made, how did the Coolabunga sale yards come to get in the state that they're in? Council's taken it upon themselves to try and revamp those facilities to the best of our ability with the money we've got to use. So I'm fully supportive of this. But in saying that, can I also commend the people that use those facilities and the agents there, that they've taken the Coolabunga sale yards in the last 12 months to another level. I mean, we went through drought where there was no cattle being sold. So, you know, there was no figures that could be comparable to anything that's being done today. Just alone in the stud sales there, that facility has lent itself in the last season or so to incorporate several new breeds in the selling complex there, which is a great draw card for the sale yards as well. So there has been a lot of work done there in consultation, and fully understand your comments as well, Councillor Erkins, but I think this is a step moving forward with the Coolabunga sale yards, and like Councillor Duff, fully supportive. If this work gets done there, we'll only promote it, and as the projected figures in the foreseeable future, I would like to think that the Coolabunga sale yards will become sustainable and a profitable little venture. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you for the report. I just wanted to confirm, so reading here, we had already allocated 226,000 to the Coolabunga sale yards. So have I read this right? Capital works requirements to meet operational plan, and then we've got the list here, and it says increase in allocation required. So I'd like to confirm, what had we actually allocated in this year's capital budget for Coolabunga?
Through you, Ms. Deputy Mayor. So originally there was $80,000 allocated to Coolabunga sale yards, and 102,000 to the cemetery, the 4 cemetery projects. So I guess bundling that together, commercial enterprises had $182,777 in capital works funding left. The proposed works that we're putting forward as a capital works plan to be delivered before 30th of June is $261,000, giving a difference of $78,223.
And have those works all been scoped?
The Coordinator Commercial Enterprises has a significant number of quotes, particularly for the works at the sale yards, and we have one solid quote for the installation of the plinths. So I'd feel very confident that we would stay on budget.
Yeah.
If we went to market with a scope that was well above our budget, we would have to work the scope back to meet the budget, rather than coming back to council requesting more funding.
In the 121 sites for Blackbutt, Wandai and Nanango, is that collective or is that for each cemetery? I'm assuming there's spread across the 3.
It is a collective across the 3. I did have a rough breakdown that I don't have in front of me. Wandai and Nanango are actually the most urgent.
Yeah.
We have, I think we've only got 6 plots available left in the lawn cemetery. If you remember, a couple of months ago I brought a report just to flag with councillors that we were changing the way that we were delivering those plinths, because it is a bit of change in practice there. But with respect to the others, it's business as usual. It's the value of the works is my understanding why it needs to be assessed as a capital works rather than just operational.
Yeah, and just my final question, just with that safety audit on Coolangatta, is that the first one that we've conducted, or I was interested in when we'd last done an audit?
I'm not aware of the previous audits. I'd have to go back through the records. This one was conducted in July of this year.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Look, I've read over the report. I do certainly read that, this does come down to if we are going to own and maintain sale yards, we do need to comply with the Animal Welfare and Protection Act. And I do recognise how important that sprinkler system will be during the summer months, particularly last year, February, we hit 3 consecutive days of record temperatures. So we know that it is certainly going to be hot, and treating those animals with best practice is very important at our sale yard facilities, certainly to ensure they continue to be used. I'm also very mindful that the safety of our community and of our staff and anybody operating or working the sale yards is equally as paramount. And I would say those elevated catwalks haven't had any work done to them since possibly the beginning of time. So I know how packed they get when you do go to a sale. There can be considerable number of people standing on them. So I do have concerns that they do need to be replaced. It is a shame that we didn't have that information when we were setting our capital program for this year. I am equally concerned about making sure we have enough plots in our cemetery, that particularly when people have had loved ones pass away, the ability to reserve a plot next to that person is very important. So we do need to do that. My concern really is the Tobinga Cemetery. I've had a number of residents raise with me just the concerns around, and I've raised it in this chamber before, the dirt track that leads out into the new section of the cemetery, where we are currently using plots and people are being laid to rest. I'm very concerned that with that track that we are actually driving on or close to driving on people who have been laid to rest. And I would just like to see, it's a question on notice, if anything from an operational point of view can be done to better designate or mark out that track, or topsoil and grass that area. With the rainfall, it's probably a great time to get the grass growing. But yeah, it is something that is a great concern to the local community. It's the way in that new part of the Tobinga Cemetery, the hearse and any vehicles in the area have to drive in. It's just very close to existing plots, and I was hoping that would be addressed with this reseal, the car park reseal. I know that that we can sweat that project if necessary, but just a question on notice, if anything can be done in that new section of the cemetery to make it more appropriate, be greatly appreciated if any feedback can come back with relation to that. Otherwise, based on the information here, it's another difficult decision our council has to make, but I've read the report and I'm supportive of the recommendation. So thank you for the work that's gone in.
Councillor Potter, you got anything to add? I have some questions for manager and GM. Are the Coolangatta sale yards being run as their own commercial business unit now? And if so, how long have they been run like that for?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So basically that's with the restructure at the start of this financial year. They're within the commercial entities unit. I wouldn't say they're being run as a specific business unit, but yeah, we've put them into that commercial enterprises department to actually with that sort of mindset. But they're not a standalone separate business unit or like an entity, if that's what you're. Yeah, so it's more just that focus. So they're in that commercial enterprise, identifying that there is that expectation of return.
Yeah, thank you. Next question is, in 21-22, there was 156K out there. How much of that was reinvested back into that facility?
A majority of that funding would have been used in operational costs.
What does operational costs? Can you just clarify that for me, please, Manager?
So the sorts of costs that are, I guess, attributed to the sale yards, undertaking tick inspections, chemicals, contractors, repairs and maintenance, sale yards, cleaning the yards out, those sort of repairs and maintenance that yards require.
I can,
Yeah.
Just have a look at our figures. So it's approximately 230,000 in operational costs. So that's paying the contractor wages, those just the day-to-day operations, not capital repair. So we spent more on it than we it was running at a loss.
At about 80, around about 75, 80,000.
235K
Yeah,
expenditure
235
last year.
less 156. Yep. So the money that is proposed to come forward or do these works now, and capital works for the Tabinga Cemetery car park reseal and all that, 23-24, it was said there before that was only $80,000 allocated in this year's budget for capital works and whatnot. Where's the capital works? What are we exchanging to bring that capital, like to make sure that capital works for Tabinga Cemetery and all that sort of stuff there is for 23-24? Where will that capital works money come from to fix that up?
Yeah, 3 years. So that would be come out of our depreciation. So that would be come out of next year's depreciation allocation. That works from the cemetery. So it's basically for next year's budget. You'd be looking at those as your priority projects to be funded first. So it will be reducing the available funding for next year's budget. But yeah, essentially, we start at that as what available depreciation to allocate to capital.
One last one for you. After the changes to the fees and charges, how are we comparing to private enterprise in other regions and other sale yards with our fees and charges that we are charging out there?
Yeah, no, have to take that one on notice. But, haven't got a comparison here.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? I don't know where I'm at with this one. I hear Councillor Shoemaker and all that, and Councillor Duff and Councillor Henson, and the conversations we've had around these sale yards, sometimes we've decided to keep them, and we do need to spend money on them. But I'm just, yeah. Any other comments, Councillor Shoemaker?
So just one final question. So if the sale yards are not meeting workplace health and safety requirements or the requirements of the Animal Welfare and Protection Act, can we continue to run them? Open them to the public, have people working in them? Like if it's been identified in a workplace health and safety audit, what level of risk is council actually accepting to continue to keep the gate open and allow operations?
So I guess, yeah, that strategically comes down to council's general appetite for risk. The yards are still operational, but unless we sort of work towards an investment year in, year out to bring them back up to an industry standard particularly, it's going to be very hard to market that out to other users and customers outside our region if we're not meeting that basic industry standard. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg kind of conversation. Which comes first? Do we market the facility out as is without investing in the capital works, and people come here with a service level expectation and disappointed and then don't come back? Or do we invest money over a couple of years to slowly bring it back to an industry level, and customers particularly, can see that investment and say, oh, yep, we can see that it's improving, we'll keep coming back. So I guess that is something that, yeah, is a push and pull that as a team, we're trying to identify and come up with the best solutions we can.
Yeah, I respect and understand that, and I guess that is my ultimate concern. At the end of the day, when you've had a health and safety audit done, there's known risks there. If we go forth and operate those yards and something catastrophic happens, somebody significantly hurts themselves, if those catwalks, something should go wrong, I feel that we are liable. I feel there has not been significant investment in those yards for a very long time. So to be able to actually market them to new users is a real challenge if they are to continue to look the way they do. I think we need to rectify those issues. We've had these conversations about other capital projects, like here in our very own office, where we had to make capital investments to protect our people. And, you know, that was certainly, would I like to have invested that money into other priorities? Absolutely. But the reality is we had an audit, there was an identified risk. I feel that if we don't actually support the staff here to improve those facilities to meet the basic standard and basic industry needs, that we're putting ourselves at risk, and we're also putting our community and the users of those facilities knowingly at risk. And I can't do that if it's been identified in an audit.
Just and follow up on your question, Councillor. It's good. If the facility was at certainly agreeing the audit is of concern and something needs to be done. If we're going to keep the facilities, they have to be brought to a standard. The risk matrix and the risk tolerance for it, is it likely that there was going to be a catastrophic failure immediately because of this audit? No. That doesn't mean that we don't have to do the work, because it will get to that point. If the facility was singularly unsafe, that someone we'd take it out and it would be shut. So the moment that it becomes, and I think just to certainly support Jennifer's answer is a good answer, but to answer your question, certainly, because I have the same concern with risk, if that facility becomes dangerous where it will, or you can't mitigate the risk that there will be cause injury or harm, it will be tagged out and it will be shut, the same as anything else. And that then has its own consequences to deal with.
Councillor Erkins.
While I understand completely what my fellow councillors are saying and agree that, you know, it needs to be brought up, my main concern is I would like to look to see what else we can do to try and improve it and make it that it is commercially viable, because I think that's where we need to be. If we're going to keep it, we need to have it paying for itself, because, you know, like that $80,000, that's not counting the improvements we make. That's just a running cost. Any other commercial operation, man, that would be gone. So, you know, we really, I mean, we do. We need to look at it. If it's not financially viable, doesn't matter how many warm, fuzzy feelings it gives us, you know, our community are paying for it. So we've got to look at how we can make it more commercially viable.
100% agree. It's if we're going to spend a fortune on it, we've got to make sure that it's running at a profit. Councillor Potter, did you want to say something there before?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Look, I actually agree with Councillor Erkins on the fact that we do need to make it commercially viable, but also we've got to realise that as a council, we did not spend any money literally on the sale yards over the last 5 or so years, and I think it's catching up with us now. You know, things didn't go the way we had planned them, 5 years ago. So now we've got to make sure that we fix the sale yards up now so they're usable. But it would be great, as I said, if we could make them commercially viable.
Councillor Anchin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, just quickly, there's been lots of discussions on this. Councillor Duff and myself over the past 12 months have been on this Coolabunya Sale Yards committee group, and it's been talked about, Councillor Erkins, in relation to putting a fence around the facility, improving the truck wash facilities there, the canteen, the toilets. there's a range of improvements being talked about there, and it all comes down to money. As Councillor Shoemaker's alluded to, you know, the workplace health and safety and the welfare of the cattle are the priority here just at this point in time. And hopefully moving forward, we can get the fence and the perimeter and everything else. The truck wash has been improved, the water facility's been improved. What's been done there at the moment with the troughs has been designed, and I like to think that what happens with these Coolabunga sale yards, in the event of further development there, or if something was to happen with the Coolabunga sale yards, and they work towards this with the troughs that were installed there, that if we build a new section of yards, those troughs can be taken out and put in that new section of yards, hypothetically. And I'd like to think, in relation to the walkways, replacement of boards on elevated catwalks, I'd like to think we could look at that, you know, if there's some new yards built there, maybe that not wooden boards, maybe that's a steel walkway or a stretch mesh walkway, that if things developed or progressed further down the track, we can take them out of that used facility and put them in what perhaps might be a new development there in time to come, if the funding was available. But I really think that in doing it, and as Councillor Potter's alluded to, I think, Councillor Potter, the money, you're being very generous within the last 5 years, because I think in the state of the yards, you can see that there's not been quite enough done there for a period of time. But I'm supportive of this, and hopefully the Coolabunga sale yards can move forward and be profitable. With the cattle industry the way it is, there's plenty of other markets out there. If you lose this, you won't get it back. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I will support this, but I just want to say that we can spend millions out there, and that's no guarantee that the cattle are going to come. There's other people at play here that need to certainly push the barrow, and if council are going to spend ratepayer money on maintaining those yards, we have to be confident that that $80,000 deficit every year is going to come back to nothing and then go into a surplus. So I just wanted to say that I will support it. It does need work out there, but is not spending $226,000 or $1 million is no guarantee that extra cattle are going to come in and that deficit will decrease. Okay, Councillor Duff, do you want to have one last word?
I was just thinking that I agree with what you're saying, Deputy Mayor, and I'm just wondering whether it's part of this resolution or whether it's a new one, but that a report be brought back to the next standing committee on the operational costs and options to consider to create efficiencies, because I've had it said that the way that we operate that there may be better options. Like I know we use some contractors to do maintenance and all sorts of things. I'd just be keen to see that we do actually take that on board and look at what we are doing just to see if we can consider some efficiencies. So just wondering what your thoughts are around adding that as a dot point or making it a second motion.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, happy to bring a report back. I was hoping if we could do that in early 2023 to allow end of this calendar year to close off in the quarter. So I've got 2 quarters of figures to come forward. Also give a little bit of time to run some modelling as well about, you know, what our expected turnover is and where we can identify opportunities in the market. So I definitely appreciate where you're coming from, and happy to be accountable for the investment and show where we can make a better return and more operational efficiencies.
So just before we go to Councillor Henson, is there a suggested time frame that you want managed, like March, April, May? When are you looking at?
If I could have till February 2023, just because we don't have standing committees in January, I'd appreciate that time frame.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I just suggest that prior to that, or rather than that we work with the Coolabunga Sale Yards Working Group with stakeholders involved with that, and then come back to council and further that discussion, because I think we need to start there with the working group and anyone involved in that before we just engage our staff and council before we go there. So I think perhaps the Coolabunga Working Group is a good place to start there.
So can that be incorporated with your report to come back, the working group and yourself, manager, and put that report together? Is that feasible?
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
All righty. We've had a fair bit of conversation around that, and everyone's had their point of view. We need a mover for the recommendation. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Erkins. No more conversation. We'll go straight to the vote. As the recommendation is read there, items 1, 2, 3 and 4. I won't read them out again. They're all there. Nothing's changed. So we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Good conversation.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor Jones. So is that just a given that that report will come back? We don't need a separate motion, or that's
Well, you can. Does that someone, manager, do you want to move something, or Councillor Duff, do you want to move something that a
I
report
just
be brought back?
that a report be brought back to the February. Is it the committee meeting? And that's after consultation with the Coolangatta Sayers Working Group on the operational costs and options. After consultation with the Coolangatta Sayers Working Group. On the operational costs and options. To consider to create efficiencies. Options are the same thing, isn't it? Or you could change that word to opportunities to consider, instead of options, opportunities to consider to create efficiencies.
You comfortable with that, manager? That pretty self-explanatory. Okay, Councillor Erkins will second that. We've had plenty of conversation, so we've got that recommendation there. Moved by Councillor Duff, second by Councillor Erkins, that a report be brought back to the February 23 Standing Committee meeting after consultation with the Coolangatta Working Group on the operational costs and opportunities to consider to create efficiencies. We go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 16.1, Portfolio for Regional Development, Development Services, Community and Social Housing. And Councillor Shoemaker now will present the portfolio report for the month of November.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As you can see, I'm happy to table the report as read, as many of my fellow colleagues have done today. Just wanted to point out, as discussed in the report, the recent change to the Queensland Planning Regulation 2017 for the Ministerial Infrastructure Designation process, which my understanding from this report is that it will provide an infrastructure designation pathway to be used for the development of social or affordable housing by a community housing provider or under state government funded program, and by prescribing this type of development as infrastructure under Schedule 5, infrastructure of the planning regulation. It will treat social and affordable housing in a manner that is consistent with other infrastructure under Schedule 5 of the planning regulation, that then allows this type of housing development to use the infrastructure designation assessment process. And I'd probably just like to invite General Manager O'May to give us a bit of a rundown on some of those changes and what it means in practice here for the South Burnett.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so I actually probably don't see that designation will have a big impact. So that's really to be if there was a major designation. So with the solar farm, where they had a major project of state significance, is given that designation, so it actually runs through that, gets that ministerial designation as opposed to going through council's planning scheme designation. But the small projects that we're looking at in that social housing space will probably just run through our planning scheme and the normal process. But if there was a major, I think, my understanding, and this is sort of off the cuff, I haven't really looked into this, but my understanding is that, it would be for those major developments that need to sort of be fast-tracked. So things like, certainly after the flooding, like the the relocation of Grantham was ministerial designation, happened in a record amount of time, but yeah, something like the solar farm. So my understanding is that we would just still probably would run through our planning process and would, probably the scale of projects we're looking at, the timeframes wouldn't necessarily shorten up. I think we talked about the other designations previously about the multiple dwellings or the granny flats is just basically the. I hope we had talked about that last meeting, didn't we? So, but yeah, that's probably. I don't think it'll have a major impact here. But if there was something that that the proponents wanted to put through that process, they could look at it. But yeah, I wouldn't be expecting it.
Yeah, thank you. I also just wanted to point out that the planning team obviously been working very hard with 109 customer requests recorded as of the 1st of November. And there's noting there in the report that there's been 4 pre-lodgement meetings held in October. Great to see one application for our development incentive scheme has come through. And I guess just wanted to clarify with GM O'May, the report here talks about some issues that were experienced in our system, and it seems from the report that they've been rectified and that future statistics around what customers are actually contacting our department around planning and building will be much clearer and better. So I think that's an improvement. It'd be wonderful if you could give us a bit more detail about that.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so talking about this, the issues in the system was more just our change from CI as a server-based platform to the cloud. So just getting those for our reporting purposes, just trying to get those two systems to marry up. So yeah, it was more just a reporting issue because we just, while it's still Tech 1, we're changing from server-based to cloud-based, and just where we're pulling figures from, making sure that we are actually getting apples with apples. But yeah, I think we are sort of have got those bugs ironed out now. So yeah, that was that shift when we shifted over a month ago.
Yeah, thank you. Just like to table the report as read. Move that it be accepted.
Thank you, councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins, any further questions, comments before we go to the vote? Okay, all good. So we have Councillor Shoemaker has moved, seconded by Councillor Erkins, that Councillor Shoemaker's Regional Development Services and Community and Social Housing Portfolio Report for the month of November be received. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 17.1, the Bunya Mountains workforce shortage. The business receives calls from interested backpackers all the time, or from those on working visas who are interested in working remotely so that they can extend the time on their visa. It is understood to be 8 weeks work in a remote location can add significant time benefit to your visa. Unfortunately, the Bunya Mountains postcode isn't recognised as remote, and when backpackers find out that they don't qualify for remote working at the Bunyas, they withdraw their application for employment. The officer's recommendation that the committee recommend to Council that the South Burnett Regional Council to provide a supporting letter to the Honourable David Littleproud, Leader of the Nationals and Shadow Minister for Agriculture, supporting the Bunya Mountains Tavern's request for the postcode to be recognised as a outer regional area. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, Councillor Duff. I think it's pretty straightforward. Councillor Shoemaker, briefly.
Yes, thank you. It's been an issue that has been raised directly in relation to finding suitable workers there at the Bunya Mountains Tavern. The owners really are struggling. The report that has come back from Minister Littleproud's pretty impressive what he has done to date, and basically if we provide a letter of support as well as information directly from the business, he will provide a business case directly for the Bunya Mountains that will hopefully see that postcode recognised with that remote status. So it's something that I certainly think we need to get behind and advocate and support, because that area is growing considerably in terms of its tourism potential, and workforce shortages across the region certainly aren't becoming anything that we haven't heard about in our respective towns. But for the Bunya Mountains, that distance travelling to and from really does make it hard to get local workforce up there. Thank you.
Thank you. So the committee's recommendation, moved by councillor Shoemaker, seconded by councillor Duff, that the committee recommends to council, the South Burnett Regional Council, to provide a supporting letter to the Honourable David Littleproud, Leader of the Nationals and Shadow Minister for Agriculture, supporting the Bunya Mountains Tavern's request for the postcode to be recognised in an outer regional area. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. 17.2, Powerlink Queensland Burnett Stakeholder Reference Group. This one's pretty straightforward for us as well. Officer's recommendation that the committee recommend to council that council notes councillor Shoemaker's invitation to be a member of the Powerlink Burnett Stakeholder Committee and endorses her appointment as council's representative. And the role of the Burnett Stakeholder Reference Group, BSRG, is to provide input and feedback on the Powerlinks project development in the Burnett region. Membership to the group is by invitation, and Powerlink has extended an invitation to councillor Shoemaker to be a part of the committee, and that's where the recommendation comes from. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, second to councillor Erkins. Comments, questions? I think it's pretty straightforward. I think right person for the job. Go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 18. We move on now to Development Services, 18.1, Planning and Land Management Operational Update, and the recommendation is that the officer's recommendation that the Planning and Land Management Operational Update be received for information. You have it there in front of you, some updates and all that sort of stuff. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Duff. Questions, comments? Councillor Shoemaker.
The only question I have, it's been raised with me by the local Chamber of Commerce, just in terms of the infill development that's been happening across the region. And I know from the reports of information that we get every year, it's been considerable how many reconfigurations there have been of a lot and how many of those, you know, one lot into 2, 3 and alike. I was just reading the stats here and I wanted to confirm that year to date we've had 15, it says the application type, we've had 15 applications. I was just wondering if we track or if which statistic actually demonstrates how many lots we've had transition, you know, that infill development from one lot to 20 lots or alike, just to give an indication of what that looks like in practice. Do we track that? Can we track that? Is it easy to pull that data?
Councillor Shoemaker, I think it's really difficult for our system to capture that data without doing it manually. I guess where we report our data is through Queensland Treasury, and Queensland Treasury put out sort of the statistics every, you know, so many months. And they generally capture the lots that are of a certain lot size in certain zones. So what we might deem as rural residential, they consider as residential lots. So if it's something that council is wanting us to capture, then it probably, we would need to I guess, sit down with our project team and work out a way of capturing that data to be pushed out automatically. But it would be quite time consuming at this point in time to break down those statistics.
Yeah, thanks. Just another, I think it would be, because there is two things, like the lots approved and the lots created are two different things. So like we could approve 200 lot subdivision that won't go ahead. So it's probably on that ceiling of the plan of surveys. But again, we sign a plan of survey and one will have 2 on it, one will have 12 on it. So it would be a manual task, I think, to create those things. But yeah, maybe through our briefing sessions we could do some indicative type stuff. But yeah, it would be a bit labour intensive trying to create because it is that depending on when they create the lots, and it will be. The lots that they're getting survey plans for now were probably approved last financial year or potentially 2 years. So yeah, it's not as simple as you'd think it would be.
No, I certainly don't mean to make it a more labour-intensive job, but there is this perception that development isn't actually happening, that infill development isn't actually happening, and that council could be a barrier to that. And I guess I'm wanting some mechanism to demonstrate to the community that while there aren't large 200 lot subdivisions happening, there's actually quite a lot of, 1 into 4 lot subdivisions. And, we just last council meeting approved 1 into 20 lot subdivisions. I can certainly see the challenge in terms of whether we approve them and when they actually come online, 2 different things. But it'd be very interesting, maybe perhaps through our briefing sessions, or if there's some way we can tell that story to our community that, there is quite a lot of infill development happening, and that is the kind of infill development that we want to see, because it is using existing infrastructure that's in place, and that does make things a lot easier in terms of turning those developments out quicker. So just know we are struggling in the housing crisis. We do desperately need more land, and do certainly acknowledge there is quite a lot of work happening behind the scenes that people don't always see. So thank you.
Thanks, councillor. Any more questions? We have the recommendation there, moved by councillor Henson, second by councillor Duff, that the planning and land management operational update be received for information. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 18.2, application for a negotiated decision notice for reconfiguring a lot in one lot into 3 lots at 272 Mount McEwen Road, Mount McEwen, and described as Lot 221 on FY 1361, and situated applicant Bruce and Andrea Anning, CO O'Reilly Nunfavia. The officer's recommendation that council does not approve the request for a negotiated decision pursuant to the provisions of Section 76 of the Planning Act 2016, however, includes the following advisory note. Advisory 4, council would accept a certificate of electricity supply from the Electricity Supply Authority demonstrating that all lots can be provided with a reticulated electricity connection as evidence of compliance with ENG 15. Quickly go to, what's your position, Sam? Sorry, but Senior Planner Sam, for a brief update on an explanation on this one.
Thank you very much. I think the report is pretty self-explanatory, given that standard conditions for electricity supply are required for subdivisions, where we get some requests for negotiated decisions stating that, say, the lots particularly are of a larger size, that there potentially isn't a need to supply electricity. In this case, these lots are of smaller rural type allotments, rural residential lifestyle lots, whatever you want to call them. We believe that we still believe that the electricity supply condition is relevant here. However, as a solution potentially in this instance only is that we would actually accept a certificate of electricity supply from Ergon saying that, because there are the electricity lines running past those properties, that supply could be obtained. We like to retain these electricity conditions, given that when these lots are sold, that the prospective purchasers would assume that they would have electricity available, and then the developer would have paid for that supply to have been reticulated rather than being the burden on the purchaser. So hence why we have left that condition in place, but given a solution as an advisory note in this instance.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Just first of all, a question. I just wanted to know the timelines on this decision, this negotiated decision. Are there any timelines around it? Like, do they have to have a response back within a certain time frame?
Yeah, councillors, too many lights. Thank you.
Through Deputy Mayor, I think we're talking about, say, if we issue our decision to the applicant of whether they have another representation, do you mean, or?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, just wanting to know if, like I'm proposing that we, I'll just foreshadow a motion that we actually lay this on the table and invite Mr and Mrs Anning to present to Council the Community Engagement Day alternative power source and how they would provide solar energy as they've suggested. So just wanting to know, is there any timelines around, you know, do we have time to negotiate this, or has it got to be today or this next council meeting?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I would suggest that council could go back to the applicant and just request an extension to come up with a, you know, discussion solution. So we're still, the application hasn't, the request hasn't lapsed. So it'd just be simple for us as planning staff to go back and request an extension in writing to facilitate those discussions if required.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. And then I would like to foreshadow a motion that this lay on the table, and we invite Mr and Mrs Anning. I've actually sent it through, so yeah, invite Mr and Mrs Anning to present to Council at the Community Engagement Day in December their plans for alternate power such as solar energy.
Yeah, you're moving that now, councillor. It's not a foreshadowed motion. So you're moving this?
Are you happy for me? Sometimes you like to hear the debate before we do that. Do you want it as a foreshadowed or do you want it now? I'm happy to be flexible because I'm, you know, you want to hear the rest of the debate, or do you want me to move that? Because is that a procedural motion? Yeah, so that would then, there's no discussion. So I put it as a foreshadowed? Yep, okay.
So we've got that foreshadowed motion there from Councillor Duff that the matter lay on the table, and we invite Mr and Mrs Anning to present to Council at the Community Engagement Day in December their plans for alternate power such as solar energy. Do we have a seconder? Or we can have a discussion first. We'll go, or Councillor Erkins will second it, but yeah, we'll open to the floor now, and Councillor Shoemaker.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor, yeah, talk to your motion first.
No, I was just going to speak against the current one, which is, well, it hasn't been moved yet, so, sorry, am I out of place? Do I need to sit down or can I speak? I'm happy to sit down if the others have got lights on and I'm not meant to speak, but I was just going to say why.
Where I've got my notes, you're just having a general discussion. So you've signalled you want to move something alternative, but unless the chair says different, we're just chatting. We're just having that general discussion before you move into something formally.
Exactly right. So you've put another option forward, councillor. So what we're saying now, we'll open it to the floor if you just want to speak briefly to what you're presenting there for discussion right now. So your foreshadowed motion is what you'll be speaking to.
So I believe the suggestion of solar panels is very reasonable. I think that as we are supporting renewable energy and clean and green and moving away from reticulated electricity, that we need to walk the talk. Clearly our planning scheme is outdated if we are not allowing for solar panels in a situation like this. So, and I noticed in the officer's assessment on page 136, the representatives made with respect to changing the conditions is not considered reasonable. And I believe that that is a reasonable consideration to have solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Erkins.
I understand why they would have originally been that you had to have power connected, mainly because I know that in Nanango there were hundreds of blocks of land subdivided with no power. However, this was some time ago, and I do agree with Councillor Duff that times have changed and people do go to alternate power methods, but I'm just not sure how council would ensure that when a search is done on someone buying those blocks, that they were notified that there was no power connected, so they can't come back to council, because I do know that council did end up putting in lots of blocks as benefited schemes where council actually had to put the power on because they're unaware. So is there any way, I don't know, General Manager Peter, whether they can be notified?
Through the chair, that's probably our concern, because that is the risk, because it's not something that generally would be recorded on our rate system sort of thing. So yeah, that's what we are probably saying. The risk is people will buy the blocks and won't necessarily know unless the agent is aware and lets it know. So yeah, it just adds that extra, because there is that expectation, as Sam had said, that there would be power there. People make the assumptions, and so yeah, that's the risk.
I do understand that fully. Is there only 3 blocks, but we're talking? 3 blocks. I don't know that it would be that, would it be that difficult to have the owner give an undertaking that anyone who buys those blocks are notified? It can be part of their contract that the buyer acknowledges there is no power connected to those blocks.
The just with my practical hat on, councillors, the issue that I would think, and they may have changed it from the last time I had a run-in over that, the moment that the plans are sealed, we lose all control to enforce conditions. Is that reasonable? Because once upon a time, if they haven't complied with conditions and we agree to the sealing of the plans, this I'm going back several years where I ended up in a court matter, something similar to this. And then you ended up, and I'll give the example of what I had, then you end up in the historic block type, development type concept where you've got a whole swag of blocks that are created on paper with no infrastructure supporting them. So the power one is generally put in there to ensure that somebody has guaranteed that you can get power to that block. Otherwise, you get left high and dry, and who's responsible? The plans are sealed, the developer's gone, and the owners bought it, and they're knocking on our door saying, you must give me power. Well, no, we mustn't. It's not our responsibility. So I'm probably, hopefully not muddying the waters, but I know, and that was some considerable time back, so they may have changed the rules on me, but I do recall it was actually in I won't name the town, but yeah, we as the council got done because to help the developer, we sealed the plans early, and then they skidded and didn't complete the conditions. And the moment we'd sealed the plans, we'd lost the ability to enforce those conditions.
Is it possible that a caveat, I know that developers do put caveats, maybe that's a condition that they have a caveat on the land that they are self-sufficient with their power? Or maybe if it's going to come up at a discussion with them, that can be just talked about then.
I think just listening to our senior planner and the comments around Councillor Duff, it may be the best option to let these come. We'll come to Councillor Shoemaker shortly, but I think let the people come in or ask for an extension and let them give a discussion, because I think my preference would be that if we were going to give permission, the people that were buying it were pretty much guaranteed that they would be able to source electricity. So that's where I'm sitting at the moment. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you. It was a bit to get your head around here. I just wanted to check. So they are rural zone lots. I've purchased a number of rural zone lots in our region that haven't had power. I've just been through the process of actually connecting power to my lot in Tingura. So my thinking is it's not uncommon for a rural lot not to have an ergon connection like directly, and the provision is, if I read right on your statement of reasons on page 139, the provision is that council has imposed conditions that require each lot to be adequately serviced, including provisions for water, telecommunications and electricity. When we describe that provision for electricity, do we actually state or describe or define that as, poles and wires, power link poles and wires, or if they can demonstrate that electricity can be supplied via renewable means at the property, does that meet the condition? Because the letter that I've got here from Owen F on behalf says that they're not asking to, you know, ignore the condition. They're asking that the applicant seeking to amend the condition, and they're asking for flexibility regarding the provision of reticulated electricity supply due to significant cost involving the providing of electricity supply to the purpose lots, and that current alternate technology may be available. You know, so my question is, does our planning scheme, when we define reticulated supply of electricity, do we actually mean an ergon connection or a PowerLink connection specifically?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, our planning scheme does clearly state that each of those lots are supplied with reticulated electricity, and it would be an expectation that each of those lots subject to that subdivision would be supplied with electricity, yes.
So there are obviously a number of historical rural lots that don't have electricity. Like, it's not uncommon for grazing lots not to have electricity. Are we particularly concerned, because I read in this, in your conditions, that it looks like there's sites cleared for dwelling houses. Is that why would we have, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of acres of grazing country in our region that would not have electricity?
Yeah, I was just going to say the difference between these are rural lifestyle lots. These are not grazing blocks. I think the difference is they're not like your 2,000. Yeah, there's seven hectares and that. So they're essentially going to be used for residential purposes.
So I just didn't understand. So certificate of electricity supply. So that comes from PowerLink, obviously. You were talking about the certificate. I'm just curious, do they do an investigation when they do a development that says, you know, you can connect power here and it's going to cost X? And is that what we're asking for? Or are we asking for the certified certificate that says it's connected? I just want clarity.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So basically, when we impose these conditions, certificate of supply is actually requiring correspondence from ergon to say that there is electricity available and that it can be provided for those 3 lots. And it's making sure that when those investigations are undertaken, because I know, say, some developers, you know, when you approach ergon, they, you know, expect money and paperwork up front for ergon to do that scoping.
Yes.
What you don't want to happen is then when you're investigating that and then you're hit with, say, a transformer, you know, another 15 to 30K that you might need for those individual lots. So making sure that there is supply available in that actual line. So it may not necessarily, you may have to, part of that subdivision may require a transformer to be put in that property boundary, and then when they go to build a house, then they actually have to extend that power line.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, sorry, I'm not a planner, but so have they supplied a certificate already, or have they had an indication that they can't get power at the locality?
We have not got any correspondence to state that there's no supply. It's just we impose that condition and they have come back and requested that condition be removed.
That we be flexible with it and allow the solar power provision. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see we're in a difficult position. I probably would like some more information. This is a bit of a changing landscape. I don't disagree with the recommendation put forward, but I would like to, if this could go to our briefing session next week so we can be clearer in terms of what we're actually deciding here. I think that would be very helpful.
Councillor Hanchen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. Just a question in relation to, on page 139, Water and Electricity Infrastructure Council has imposed the conditions that require each lot to be adequately serviced, including provisions for water, telecommunications and electricity. It's the applicant's responsibility to ensure these services are provided and are sufficient to service the lots. are these or any of this anywhere near, or are we going to have something come to us in relation to the Proston water supply? Because that's right on the edge of it, or right there.
So through Deputy Mayor, we're still talking about Mount McEwen Road for the conditions. So this has already been decided and adopted by council. So we can't go back and negotiate any conditions. But water supply, there's actually ENG 8, which talks about that future dwellings will be provided with rainwater tanks capable of 45,000 litres storage, and on-site waste treatment system.
Okay, so what I'm gathering, are we happy to deal with Councillor Duff's foreshadowed motion in regards to Councillor Shoemaker wants more information? These people, and listening to the senior planner, Sam said that we can get in contact, or staff can get in contact with Mr. and Mrs. Enning and ask them to apply for an extension, which will sort them out for more time, and then it gives us as a council to let Mr. and Mrs. Enning come in and make an appointment through the community engagement days. Is that where we're sort of sitting? Do we want to deal with that? So we've got that the matter lay on the table, and we invite Mr. and Mrs. Enning to present to council at the community engagement day in December their plans for alternate power, such as solar energy. Councillor Duff moves that foreshadowed motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins. Okay, any more comments? Yeah. Okay, we will go straight to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. We no longer have Councillor Potter. Okay, so it is 12:45. I think we can break for lunch. I move that we move out of this meeting and come back. Oh, yeah, well, first of all, do I have a seconder? Councillor Erkins. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Can we come back? Thanks, councillors and senior staff, and anyone on live stream still. I'd like to move that the meeting resume at 1:48. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henson. All those in favour? Unanimous. Can I first start off by apologising on behalf of myself, Councillor Henson and Councillor Erkins. We obviously were hoping to be back at 1:30, and we had a little bit of an issue with lunch orders, so sincere apologies to everybody. 18 now, 18.3, the reconfiguring one lot into 3 lots at 163 Bowman Road, Blackbutt North, and described as Lot 94 on RP 891602, and the applicant is F&J Green, care of O'Reilly Nunn Favia Surveyors. So I have... Do I go to that? We have Councillor Duff.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have an alternative motion, and I believe that you also do, Deputy Mayor Jones. So CEO Mark has in the break combined the two. Kimberly has them on the screen, I think.
Okay, so Councillor Duff has an amendment, alternative motion, that the committee recommend to council the application be approved subject to the council developing suitable conditions and adopted infrastructure charges notice to be attached to this decision notice, and this report be brought to the November general meeting of council. The reasons for council's consideration of this approval are: 1, having regards to the submissions and considering part of the common material presented in the report, that there is merit in the proposal to address a need for lifestyle-related rural lots in Blackbutt. 2, it is a relevant matter that there is a community need and promotion of community well-being through the development of lifestyle blocks for the Blackbutt area. 3, having regards to the common material, 5, property made submissions were in the positive, and note of property centre and Main Street Realty submissions note the demand for property, particularly given the issues associated with a lack of residential accommodation within Blackbutt and the South Burnett Regional Council area. 4, the approval is adjacent to residential and would not fragment the area to any greater degree and support the density as proposed by the neighbouring properties. That is, the development would be consistent with the neighbouring properties. 5, we have a housing crisis in our region and demand for land is at a premium. 6, there is a strong community support for this development. With that alternative motion or recommendation, I'll open it to the floor for any comments or conversation. Do we need a seconder? I think Councillor Duff's moved it. Have a seconder, Councillor Henson. We'll open it to the floor for any conversation or questions before we go to the vote. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, look, I think those 6 points there have explained it fairly well. Aware of the property, and I can't see any problem with this myself. And as it states there, the region is in a crisis. We want developments and we want some subdivisions. So I think this fits all of that criteria well. It's not crossing any boundaries, and it's adjacent to the similar lifestyle blocks. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jones. Yeah, I think we need land subdivided. The other land that is in Blackbutt is, some of it's not for sale. We just attended a housing and homeless forum where they've suggested that we need to think outside the box and be flexible. So I think this is our opportunity to walk the talk and actually think outside the box and be flexible. And I know it's against the officer's recommendation, but I think that in this instance, given this community support, I was surprised to see the submissions, because normally the submissions are against these proposals, but the submissions are all in favour of the proposal. And I'd just like to read out just briefly some of the submissions. So this one was from the Yarram and Blackbutt property, their real estate, and we have offices in Blackbutt, Yarram, Dalby and Toowoomba. The growth in the area has been phenomenal in the last 18 months. Things have been selling extremely quickly, and we now have more people looking for properties than we have listings. And then the second one is that this has reference to the proposed subdivision of a couple of 5-acre blocks at 160 Bowman Road, Blackbutt. We live in one of the blocks close by and have no objection to this subdivision going ahead. It would match the other blocks that go up to Bowman Road from town. Also, I'm sure with the real estate market today, not having these size blocks so close to town and people looking to buy in our community. This one here is from Blackbutt Golf Club. We wish to advise that we feel the above proposed development will be beneficial to the Blackbutt Golf Club, as it could potentially increase the membership through means of buyers joining our club. Furthermore, the Blackbutt Golf Club has no negative thoughts or comments against this proposed development. We feel it will only bring positive outcomes. So, and there's 2 more. So I just think that it's a win-win for everybody in this situation. So I'm very keen to support this recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just had a couple of questions just in relation to the assessment that we've done. It's clear that it's in a rural zone, and in reading over the application, as per page 147, said we've assessed the application against state planning policy and Schedule 12A assessment benchmarks for particular reconfiguring a lot of the Planning Regulation 2017. It says here that the planning regulation states the assessment must be carried out against the assessment benchmarks, and for livable communities and housing, it goes on to say that there's restrictions for new land subdivisions where there exists underutilised land already zoned for residential use or land division. Just wanted to better understand that from a community point of view. You know, this is one of those instances where it is surrounded by rural residential lots. It absolutely, you know, in looking on it at face value, it absolutely makes sense. But I do recognise that, you know, we have got here on page 151, it states that we've got 37.4 hectares of available emerging communities land zoned, 14.7 hectares of low-density residential land zoned, and 295 hectares of rural residential land zoned. I'm just curious to understand more about that assessment that council has done, and definitely in terms of this available land for development, how can we be sure that that's actually going to be developed or has been discussed for development? You know, whilst it's zoned, it's not always clear whether somebody who owns a large rural residential lot would actually want to or have the capital available to subdivide it. So that's my question.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Wow, that's a mouthful. Okay. I guess what I'll do is talk about the party of the state interests, those state planning policies. So part of our planning scheme, we have to reflect the state planning provisions. So with the state planning provisions, if they're not completely reflected in our planning scheme, we have to have due regard to them. So what those livable communities and housing provisions are seeking to ensure that we're consolidating and developing existing land that is set aside for subdivision that's zoned appropriately, like rural residential and low density, rural residential, low density residential and medium density residential. So it's not seeking to fragment rural land, introducing, say, these kind of lifestyle allotments where there is suitable land set aside for future development. I understand that not everyone that owns land that's zoned rural residential in that area may be looking at developing, but as you can see, there's, I guess, 290 something hectares available of underutilised or vacant rural residential land. Correct, not everyone's going to subdivide. There is currently land to the east there's applications coming in for further infill development over that R1 precinct for 4,000 square metre allotments. So we've reviewed the state planning policy and we believe that the application that was submitted and the arguments that were put across were conflicting. I'm sorry, Councillor Schumacher, I need you to give me some further information so I
No,
can
that's
continue to talk
really
to it.
what I was trying to understand. So you said the state planning policy provisions, if they're not reflected in the planning scheme, you have to have due regard for them. It was my understanding, though, that those policy provisions really set the framework for our planning scheme. So I don't fully understand why that assessment would be different.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, so when we drafted this scheme, there was old state planning policy provisions that we had to have regard to, and that's where we based our framework around. And as the changes are made to the state planning policies, then we actually have to have regard to anything that's actually changed. So it's I'm not quite sure what else to say in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. I've had a look at it, certainly with the submissions received and the information that we have here with the locality of where is being proposed. I certainly understand the implications being nearby a rural zone. My concern, however, is that there isn't available land at the moment and we are in a shortage and we do desperately need more houses. Our current rental vacancy rate at today's date is 0.1%. It's actually quoted in the REIQ report that we've taken out the top prize for the region with the very lowest rate of rental vacancy, which is extraordinary. We were 0.3% at the last quarter, so to see that that's basically become zero is harrowing. I know there's every development has to be assessed based on its own provisions, and I feel like, you know, there's no guaranteed consistency across all development applications, and I understand this is a bit outside the box, but yeah, I'm supportive of it going ahead if it can be done.
Any other comments, councillors? Oh,
Deputy Mayor, just as it's not pro or anti the discussion, but I'd just like to acknowledge the staff and certainly, certainly the tone of the debate is really appreciated because the staff present the report in line with the technically the aspects of the scheme as it's presented, and this is the system as particularly where there's a refusal and with good grounds for refusal. It's fed up and council makes a decision on community impact is probably as much as the technical aspects of the scheme. And again, please, no inferences, but I just, would acknowledge the staff and the professionalism that the report's been prepared with.
Mr. CEO, you stole my thunder. That's exactly where I was heading, because this is no reflection on the recommendation from the staff, because they are operating as they're supposed to, and it's a tremendous report. But with the rest of the councillors, I will support Councillor Duff's recommendation to the council. So is there any more comments? All good? So we have the alternate recommendation moved by Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor Henson, that the committee recommends to council that the application be approved subject to the council developing suitable conditions and adopted infrastructure charges notice to be attached to this decision notice and this report to be brought to the November general meeting of council, and the reasons for council's consideration is all listed below, all 6 points. I won't go through them, nothing's changed. So we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 18.4, list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report, and the officer's recommendation that the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder. Councillor Erkins, comments, questions, councillors? It's all there pretty much laid out in front of you. Nothing too spectacular. We go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Henson? Yep, unanimous, thank you. 18.5, delegated authority reports from the 1st of September 22 to the 31st of October 22. The officer's recommendation that the delegated authority report be received, and this one goes from 166 on the agenda to 336. A lot of reading. Councillor Duff, questions? Oh, you want to move it? Okay, thank you. So do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins. Okay, questions and comments, councillors, before we go to the vote? Massive report there, plenty of reading. Kept me awake for hours. Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll go to the vote. The committee recommendation, moved by Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor Erkins, that the delegated authority report be received. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 19.1, nomination, these are questions on notice. 19.1, nomination of single driver insurance policy. And the following question on notice was received from Councillor Henson at the Executive and Finance Corporate Standing Committee meeting on the 21st of September 22. The question was, does council have any vehicles with a single nominated driver? If not, could council investigate the option for our insurance policy as to what implications and cost savings are? The response is there. Councillor Henson, are you happy with that, or is you happy with that? And councillors, all other councillors are happy? So, Councillor Henson, would you like to move that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to move that these questions on notice be noted as accepted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Erkins, thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 19.2, another question on notice, rates notice and reminder notice, financial hardship. This was received from Councillor Shoemaker. Are the details of Council's hardship policy included in the rates reminder notices that are issued? Councillor Shoemaker, are you happy with the response?
Yes, thank you. It's great to read that the financial hardship rates information's been now included with the rates notice, so that's excellent. Thank you.
You happy to move, councillor, that be accepted?
Yes.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the confidential section, section 20. Officer's recommendation that council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012. 20.1 Dog Registration Write-Off. This matter is considered to be confidential under section 254JC of the Local Government Regulation, and the council is satisfied that discussion of this matter in an open meeting would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest as it deals with the local government's budget. 20.2 EBA negotiations. This matter is considered to be confidential under section 254JB of the Local Government Regulation, and the council is satisfied that the discussion of this matter in an open meeting would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest as it deals with industrial matters affecting employees. And 20.3 request to hire Kingaroy Town Hall for Christmas Day and New Year's Eve and fees be waived. This matter is considered to be confidential under section 254JF of the Local Government Regulation, and the council is satisfied that discussion of this matter in an open meeting would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest as it deals with matters that may directly affect the health and safety of an individual or a group of individuals. Do we have a mover? I move that we now go into confidential. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. So we'll... All right, councillors and senior staff and people online, I move that we come out of confidential and resume the meeting. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, the first item to deal with is 20.1 Dog Registration Write-Off. The officer's recommendation that council approve the write-off of approximately $54,000 for outstanding dog registrations for the 21-22 year, and that this be accounted for in council's compliance 22-23 budget. Do I have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder. Councillor Henson, go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. 20.2 EBA negotiations. The officer's recommendation that the report be received for information and that we ask the CEO continue to negotiate with the unions. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Henson. Councillor Duff.
Yes, I'm happy to support this recommendation. Really wanting to see that negotiations continue. We have the second highest disadvantaged region behind Cherbourg. A third of our ratepayers are pensioners, so any of these rises will have a flow-on effect to the most vulnerable people in our community. So I'm just keen to see that continue the negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. No further comments. We'll go to the vote. The recommendation is moved by, Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor Henson, that the report be received for information, that we ask the CEO to continue negotiations with the unions. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 20.3. Request to hire Kingaroy Town Hall for Christmas Day and New Year's Eve and fees be waived. We have an alternate motion, Mr. CEO, that's correct? That's what we go to? Okay, so that the committee recommends to council that council waive the fees for the Kingaroy reception room for the South Burnett Peace of Mind Association should they wish to use it through the Christmas and New Year period. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Erkins. I think it's straightforward. We go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. That concludes our meeting today, councillors, for Liveability, Governance and Finance Standing Committee meeting for the month of November. Thank you for your participation, and all senior staff. Thank you, good meeting and safe travels home, and see you later.